That's the second. I've been in spaces tonight. I think they're acting funny because I've gotten dropped from other people's spaces tonight. And then I started it up at the beginning, Nikki, and it just dropped me at the beginning, and then that just happened.
I think quite clearly Elon Musk is a Democrat, and this is just him taking a victory lap. So I think there's no question in my mind that this is
Yeah.
him punishing conservatives for having.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
gonna
it's pretty straightforward. Or it's God saying he doesn't want Reducation this week, and that we move on to something else. It's one of the two. But
yeah, we'll see what happens here.
Yeah, if it happens again, then I'm right.
Okay, yeah, that's true. If it happens again, you are correct about that. There's cats. We'll just get it going again. We'll get rolling again. Hate when that happens, but it's all good.
Do we have a Let's? Has he disappeared? Was he still in here when it crashed?
Preston was in here. Yeah, I think so. Thought so.
Yeah.
I'll get all right, cats. Sorry about that. Let's we'll start Reducation again in a couple minutes. Let me get some people in here and you can kind of banter with Nikki and stuff.
What the heck just happened? Honestly, oh, stop it. What happened, really?
Jason dropped his phone in the toilet and it crashed the space.
Oh, I don't believe that, to be honest with you.
No, that's not what happened. He was reading his weekly My Little Pony and it overwhelmed him.
Hey, Nikki, you're not supposed to tell people about My Little Pony. That's Why did you tell people about that?
I think he was reading highlights for children. Nobody knows highlights for children? Come on, people.
No.
He was reading Goofus and Gallant. Probably nobody knows that one either.
I think Spaces is acting up tonight, cats. I've been dropped from a couple when I've been in there, and when I first opened this one, it dropped. Hopefully, it'll be fine now, and everything will be good. But that was weird.
Just out of curiosity, what was the last thing you heard me say?
We'll just start from the beginning. It's okay. You're okay to talk. You're ready to talk.
Well, are you still waiting for more people to come in?
If you want to, just banter with some people until Michael's got his hand up. I'm gonna send invites. Go ahead, Cats. You run the show, and
okay.
Thank you for coming back, Shiloh.
Yeah, Michael, what's up, dude?
I noticed that my Twitter app got updated, so I think they're probably doing updates on the app.
Oh, nice timing. Why don't they wait till the middle of the night?
Right.
Dang. That's bizarre. Nikki, do you have a cat?
Do I have a cat?
Yeah.
I do not. I am extremely allergic to cats. If a cat ever got into my apartment, I would have to move and burn all my furniture.
Oh, wow.
Basically. So,
but if you weren't allergic, would you have one?
I would have a bunny if I wasn't allergic. I like rabbits a lot, but I can't have a rabbit because I'm super allergic to them as well.
Oh, well, yeah, because it's probably something in the fur, I'm guessing.
Yep, the dander is basically identical. So,
yeah.
Unfortunately, that precludes me. But, that happens. Life does not always happen what you want. So,
well, my mom always loved cats, and when she got older, she started to get allergic to them. But she wanted cats so bad that she would go get these painful shots so that she could handle being around her cats. That's how bad she wanted to have a cat,
I
which I
got those
thought was
shots
cool.
for 2 years when I was in high school, and they helped a little bit, but not nearly enough. So
Wow. I knew a guy once that was so allergic to dogs and cats that if he went into a house that, let's say, 10 years ago they had a dog, and there was remnants of maybe an accident the dog had, or that was kind of deep in the carpet kind of thing, that no one else could detect, this guy would have a problem. He was that allergic, which is really bizarre. I don't have those kind of issues, so I'm not familiar with them. Hey Becky, what's up?
Well, I literally just wanted to say, I mean, I was listening to the commentary last night about the elections and the outcomes, and I really truly want to give a shout out to Nikki because he stepped in and said his piece. And Nikki, I know that you are not in the same line as I am as far as thinking goes with politics, but I have always appreciated your insight to where you stand. And and I'm just very happy with the way things turned out here in South Dakota. John Thune, Chrissy Nome. Thank goodness James Smith is not going to be our governor. Thank goodness for that. But no, seriously, Nikki, you have always been respectful with your insight on things, and I really just want to thank you for that. And and Kat, thank you for your input and everything, and like everyone last night that was like giving updates on everything. There were so many people. Um, Seriously, I just thank you everyone for. Yeah, I was just listening the whole time because I was doing stuff at work last night. I'm just very grateful for everyone's input, and I am so well, okay, can I say this? I'm pissed off that Oz did not win in Pennsylvania because that is actually the district that my sister Beverly lives in, my oldest sister, and she is of a faith that does not get involved with politics, and and she has really wanted a conservative outcome for her state. Anyway, so that's really all I have for the moment. I'm not going to be online much longer because I got a new phone today through Verizon. I'm very excited about it, and I have to do my whole activation transfer thing with my phone. But so I'll stay on as long as I can. Anyway, I will let you
Well,
guys.
we
I'm gonna go on
appreciate you,
mute.
Becky. We appreciate you. So,
Jason, no, Jason, seriously, thank you for having this forum for everyone to have a voice. You really have no idea for me where I am, how important it is to have a voice like that and what you're doing here and with Kat and Let's Talk. By the way, is Let's Talk back yet?
he is not.
uh,
I've
he's
pinged.
not, but yeah.
So
Go ahead.
Like, what
Go
the
ahead,
hell is up
Nikki.
with
can I
that?
can
Go
I
ahead,
say
Nikki.
something
You can
really
say,
fast?
yeah. Go ahead, Nikki.
Yeah, Nikki, please.
Yeah, so I just wanted to very quickly say thank you for what you said. I also wanted to say, so do you have an iPhone or Android? Your old phone, new phone?
I have an Android.
Okay. Not as familiar with the transfer. I was going to give you some technical advice on the transfer
No,
process.
it's a very simple process. I just have to do it.
Yeah,
I picked it up today, but I got a huge discount on this phone. It's
that's
a
awesome.
Moto G
Oh, those are
128
great.
gigabyte phone with a 50 megapixel camera on it. I'm like
Nice.
stoked.
Um, but yeah, it's always nice to be able to um, give people an unbiased understanding of uh, what's going on. And I've said from the beginning that I've always tried not to be. I have my partisan viewpoints, and I will. I can usually make it very clear when I'm being partisan. But in terms of my analysis of like what's going on, um, I always want to try to give people a clear appreciation of where we are, what's happening. so that they walk away well informed and they can make up their own decisions about what that means, and how they should react to it. But to see the world the way it is, and what's happening with the election the way it is, so that you're not surprised. I hate surprises in my life. It's my number one thing. I tell my mom, like, just tell me what you're getting me for my birthday. I don't want to be surprised. I'm better about that now than I was when I was 10 years old. But like, I hate surprises. I can't handle surprises well. And so I always try to understand things as well as I can so that I'm never surprised by anything. And that applies equally to how I try to talk about stuff like this.
Well,
Um,
no, I mean, seriously, I mean, you are so welcomed in this forum. I mean, your side of things, the way you express yourself, honestly, I've always felt you have been very respectful to other views. And for that reason alone, I respect you as a person. I know, like I said, I don't always agree with things that you've talked about, but I totally respect you and I thank you for your insight on your side of things.
well, I appreciate it very much, and I appreciate Jason and Katz and many others for creating the
Oh,
space in the first
absolutely.
place.
I
So,
love these people. I mean, and I'm not really gonna say like I love you, but I mean like I love that you can be so open and honest with your thoughts about things, your views on things, and that you feel that you can come here with Jason and Katz and everyone else that's been a host, and feel free to speak the way you do. And you're always so respectful about it. So I just really want to give a shout out to you. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky, and yes, I really appreciate viewpoints from both sides. And Nikki is I've learned a lot from him, and it's cool. I'm learning some technical stuff from him too. But let me just say, you guys, that building this platform, it is my dream to have a place for people to come and have a voice. It's one of my dreams, and I didn't know 8 months ago that this is where this would be. You guys don't know, but last night was the biggest forum in history in the 8 months that Katz and I have been doing this. The biggest. And I almost just like, I'm in awe. I'm like, whoa, like that's crazy. So we had 148 people throughout the night in the room. I've
That
never
is
seen that.
amazing. That is
So
amazing, Jason.
yeah. And I am so excited to have a place for you guys to come, Becky, and have a place to talk, because we all need a voice, and we all need a place to speak. So I'm gonna keep doing this. This is my passion. I'm hoping someday this goes beyond what it is. But we'll see. I mean, I'm just gonna keep working on it, and I'm working with Mitty and Nikki and Democrats, because I'm sick of and I know Nikki says we're sick of the fighting, the infighting between parties. When this country needs to come together and stop the divide of fighting with each other. So, yes, Becky, you're always honored to be here to hang out with us, as everybody in this room is. The only ones we kick out are the trolls, the ones that come in and just want to wreak havoc and not actually have discussions. So,
wait, but you allow
definitely.
Lapis to come into this room whenever he wants to. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's where we are with that, and everything. Before we're gonna go back, Cats, and I'm gonna go over the guidelines again, because we're gonna go back into it and try to get back on track. But
Yeah, I
thank you
just
everyone.
really want to quick say I can't stay because, like I said, I have to get my new phone activated, so I'm probably not going to be on for the rest of the night. But I was very happy that you were on right now, and I just keep this going, Jason, please, because not only for just yourself, just but for like people like me that are learning more. Honestly, it's making me to want to get even more involved in politics than I ever possibly thought I could imagine. Like even like locally, like getting. I've actually considered like stepping up beyond where I am and being a manager at a restaurant. Um, just because of how passionate that I become, especially because of this forum. I did not realize how passionate I was until I started becoming involved with this with you. Um, I mean, I locally, I feel like I have a voice. and I'm gonna start crying saying this, but I really feel like I can make a difference where I live.
Well,
So
keep
thank
yeah.
you for
Oh, I did have one other thing I just wanted to say. No,
yes,
it's not your
Nikki, go
Dakota,
ahead.
but it's the other Dakota. And
Oh,
I'm very
North
happy
Dakota.
because you're South Dakota, right?
I'm South Dakota, yes.
Yeah. So North Dakota expanded Medicaid yesterday by double-digit margins, and I just want to say I'm very proud of the Dakotas for doing that because it's going to be great for lots of people in North Dakota. And I know it's South Dakota's a different state, but I give you both credit for when one of the Dakotas does something good. So
But I did want to say, though, I did vote to legalize marijuana, though it did not
Woo!
pass. I did vote to legalize it because though I do not smoke it myself, or nor do I partake, but I'm a huge advocate for it because I know how helpful it can be for people, especially like with my oldest daughter that lives in Washington State where it's legal. She has ADHD with aggression, and she was clinically diagnosed at a very young age with that, and she stopped taking medication on her own to be more self-aware of her issues with her ADHD. And we call it squirreling. I'm not sure if you heard that term before. So when we're talking on the phone, I can tell when she's not partaken and when she has, and I'll just be like, Amanda, squirrel. Oh, sorry, mom. She'll get back on track. So I just even something as simple as that, I know how helpful it is to people. I know for myself personally, it would help me with my pain that I have from my car accidents that I've been through. But I really cannot. I've tried and I get vertigo and I cannot do it. So, but I am a huge advocate for that, just for the medical purposes alone. Um,
I'm okay with people doing that too. What I don't like is I don't like the smell of the pot. It makes a cigarette smoke and
oh,
everything
me
makes me
neither.
sick. And and so the smell really bothers me. And I have neighbors that think that it's okay when we want fresh air in the summer to just smoke it up and smell the neighborhood up and it really ticks me off. I get really angry. I'm like I want to move. Like it upsets me. So I mean people can do whatever they want to do. I just can you have a little bit of respect for your neighbors, you
I
know?
am right there with you, Jason. I am an advocate for it, but I don't want to smell it. And it's even worse when people come in, toke it up in their car, coming to the restaurant and stinking up the whole restaurant. Ugh. Anyway,
Yeah.
I love
All
y'all.
right,
I'm
Becky.
gonna sign off. And again, Nikki, thank you so much for being a respectful advocate for your side of things. I cannot thank you enough because I always appreciate when you're here. Anyway, let's talk gets back on soon because there's no reason why he should have been banned. I don't understand it. So anyway,
Yeah.
Jason,
he
hugs and
has a
love to you,
temporary
cats.
account.
Hugs and love
I'll
to
DM
you.
you his
Hey,
temporary
wait, is
account.
Gaycon here? No,
No.
Gaycon's not here. Okay, well, if
No.
Gaycon comes on tonight, tell him I said hi, okay?
Definitely. We'll do that.
And especially the judge. Tell him
Yeah.
Becky's thinking about him.
All right. Well, thank you, Becky. And I just want to say that I get a lot of people that will message me and ask why I have certain people in the room that because they have disagreements with me, like Nikki. And I'm like, you don't realize that Nikki and I are friends. Like we have disagreements, but we also come to an understanding. I know I'm not gonna I want to build friendships and I don't want to if somebody's an asshole, yeah, I'll deal with it. But and I won't hang out with them. But Nikki's not an asshole. So, it's like some people get mad about that. And I'm like, you know what? Just get over it. We need to get along in this country and there's far worse people that you can deal with in a grocery store that look at you funny and have an attitude than people that come into these spaces. And since we just got to learn how to get along in this country. But thank you, Becky,
Thank you,
and
Jason. Thank you, thank
let's
you, thank you.
no problem. And you're always welcome here. I'm going to keep this space going. I'm encouraged by having you guys here. It is not, I definitely want to just stay humble and understand that even if it grows and it becomes something bigger, This is not about me. This is about you guys. I am here for you guys. I do this because I believe I believe I have some talent to host and be and moderate. So I'm going to continue to do this, and Katz has jumped on board to help me out with that, and Nikki and a bunch of people. Like we're this is awesome. I'm having fun with it. But that being said, let's go back to let's start Reducation after I give the guidelines, Cats. I'm going to go through the guidelines again, and then I'll be doing some inviting.
Hey,
So
Jason.
yeah,
So since it's almost 9, I just want to suggest, since that lady that inspired that theme is not here, I just want to suggest that maybe we just go right into the what you were doing at 9, and then I can use that another time. But I mean, it's up to you, of course. But we're looking at it's almost 9, and I
I
think
know, but
the
we're probably going to go a little. I want the whole show if we can for the podcast, so I'm going to try to stick it till 11:30. So, I understand where you're coming from. Why don't you bring it up for people to talk about, unless you don't want to?
yeah. Well, it's not that I don't want to. I was kind of hoping that lady would be here.
Well, I'll try
That's
to invite her while we're starting Reducation.
okay.
I'll see if I can. I'll see if I can do that. But I think it'd be good just talk about it with people. Let's go into the guidelines real quick here, and like I said, thank you for everybody for being here. Here we go. As freedom thinkers in the conservative political forum, we believe and value our constitutional rights. We recognize that amongst ourselves there are varied opinions, as we just talked about. This forum is a safe place for all of us. We don't tolerate personal attacks or raised voices. We also ask that you be considerate of people who do not want to hear profanity, and be self-aware of your mic time, as we want everybody who wants to contribute to the topics can. So go ahead, Katz, and I will see if I can get that person in here, because I know that you wanted to bring it up with her as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, for those who aren't familiar, Reducation is our weekly segment. We typically do it at 8:30. It is education via point counterpoint with each other on topics important to many Americans. And sometimes these topics get emotionally charged. The forum guidelines, which Jason just covered, are in place. We expect everyone to remain civil. If you have a mic, you'll have a chance to respond. Raise your hand. I will call on you. So, because this segment is very short, we do ask you to keep your answers concise, short. If you kind of go on a bit long, I may interrupt you and ask you to come to your point so we can move on. So I was inspired by this woman who was in the election special forum last night, who told a story about how she and her husband have a neighbor that they hardly knew him, that he seemed like he was a super nice guy, that he ran for election for the local school board and he won his seat, and he must have had like a open house celebration at his home, and she and her husband went over there briefly and congratulated him. But here's what the kicker was. The kicker was that this neighbor person, this man, is a CRT advocate, and this woman and her husband do not believe in CRT. But yet I felt it was very big of her to still go over to this man's home. Since they hardly know each other, he certainly probably has no idea of their political leanings. But anyway, they congratulated him. I told her I could not do that. So I'm just curious if anybody has had similar situations. I couldn't do it because I guess I feel like I'd be violating my principles, and I would also feel like I hardly know the guy. He's not going to miss me if I don't show up. Nothing's going to happen. But it was suggested that she try to get to know him little by little and, maybe start up a conversation about CRT just to see what he says and see if she can plant some seeds to get him maybe to think a different way about that. So I was just curious if anybody had similar situations and what they thought. I mean, would you actually like congratulate this guy thinking, he's gonna go indoctrinate your children? Anybody? Um, Jeannie?
If they're indoctrinating, sorry, uh, children, no, I wouldn't want to be friends with him. I mean, you don't have to be friends with all your neighbors. You can pick and choose who your friends are. Obviously, you can't pick who your neighbors are, and you can pick who your acquaintances are. So, this person would be more of an acquaintance that you might wave to, but to actually talk about it, I don't see any good coming out of that. How could there be?
I mean, some people have the mindset that we should plant seeds if we're able. And, of course, none of us know this guy. He could come unglued about it and get really ticked off, and who knows what his reaction would be if he figured out that you weren't just interested in CRT, that you really wanted to get him to swing the other way. So you don't know what somebody's reaction is going to be, but yet, do we have any kind of obligation to try to help people with opposite beliefs maybe come to a different conclusion?
No.
Okay, that was short and sweet. Oh, gotta love it. Nikki, what? I don't know your position on CRT. If you think there's nothing wrong with it, or what you think.
I think that CRT is a college level framework for analyzing racism in the context originally of legal issues, and that the teaching of history with an eye toward, um, racial equality, and a recognition that the history that I learned when I was in high school um, did not necessarily include a lot of the things that I've learned since then. Um, I don't think it's necessarily bad to do a reevaluation and say, of all the things we could be talking about, what are the things that are going to give our students the most full picture of of American history, or are we teaching them things that are just teaching them history as they would have been perceived by rich white people? There was a version of history, I'm sure, that was taught in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s that probably didn't talk as much about like Jewish immigration in the late 1800s and 1900s, and the life of my great great grandparents that they lived when they came over here. So, there was a version of history in years before that when the lives of Irish immigrants in the early 1800s were probably completely overlooked because the people who were running the country didn't like the Irish. And now we talk about both of those things pretty extensively in our history. Um, So I think the Republican opposition to that kind of a reevaluation and to looking at curriculum standards and asking those kind of questions is short-sighted, um, because you're going to need those voters eventually. But it's also just wrong. Like we should be asking ourselves constantly, um, is the version of what we're teaching our kids the best version that we can, or are we just sticking with what we taught, what our parents were taught, because we don't think change is ever necessary. We don't think a reevaluation is ever necessary. So um, I, I don't care whether you call it CRT or a pony. I'm in favor of teachers. I'm in favor of school boards. I'm in favor of, curriculum evaluation uh, groups in consultation with parents. Like, this is not something that should be done just high on the hill academics and whatever. School boards make these determinations about what gets put in the classroom, and they should. That's how we've structured a system. But if school boards say we want to teach it this way, if the voters pick that school board and the school board votes for it, I think that individual parents making a fucking like ruckus, sorry about the swearing, to try to get that to be stopped is dumb. But I think school boards should be looking at their curriculum, and they should be making good choices about how to adapt to do a better job at teaching history than they did the last time they looked at it.
Well, and thank you for that. But modern day CRT, in terms of including it in curriculum in the K through 12 atmosphere, may be radically different than whatever was originally taught at law schools or college. I mean, that part I don't know. It's a heck of a lot more than potential missing history. It's so much more than that, and there's so much um, documentation from schools teaching it, also from major corporations forcing it upon employees, and it's actually racist. It teaches you to look at everything through a race lens. It basically teaches that white people equals bad, white people oppressors, every single white person on the planet, no matter how much you deny it, you are a racist. And that is what they teach. And, it's ridiculous. I mean, everybody can be racist. A black person can be racist. An Asian person can be racist. But according to the way they're teaching it, only white people are racist. And we should be taught to not look at race, thinking the thought that everyone is alike, that we're all human. I shouldn't be looking at you and going, oh, black person. I should look at you and say, oh, person. But that's not what's happening. And there's plenty of proof and documentation of it existing in many, many schools, teaching these children this divisive rhetoric. It's just not good. And if you're a white child, the confusion, and I've heard many a times of parents saying, my child came home from school today and, was upset, basically like, mommy, am I bad because we're white? I mean, it's just honestly just downright crazy. Jeannie, I think you may have had your hand up next. Go ahead.
I'll give an example. Today's sixth grader came home and said that George Washington got his teeth from the slaves. And I'm going, they didn't teach me that in school. They didn't teach my daughter that in school. So I looked it up and tried to read different sources. And every article or every piece of information It says he may have. Not that he did, he may have. Because there was a time where, from what I understand, slaves sold their teeth probably as they fell out, for to get money for them. That's how sometimes they'd make money. But for a teacher to say specifically that's where he got his teeth, when it's questionable if that, number one, was true, and number two, you know there's no proof of that anywhere from what I could tell.
Can I jump in here for just a second? So I went to the Mount Vernon website, which is the web for the estate of George Washington. And one of the pages that comes up is George Washington and teeth from enslaved people. And the first sentence reads, quote, "We know that George Washington participated in one purchase of teeth from unidentified enslaved persons at Mount Vernon. A record of this transaction is entered twice in George Washington's financial records."
I understand that, but if you read other websites, it says differently.
But this is
And I
Jeannie.
think
This is
I,
This is
literally the
coming
Mount Vernon
straight from
website.
wait a
the
minute.
source. This would
Hey,
be the website that is correct. This is correct
n-
website. There is no other that matters
Colin?
when this is the.
Oh, okay.
Hold up, guys.
Hold
Yeah,
it.
let's. Okay, so
Yeah.
Jeannie can talk. Colin is next after Jeannie, but Nikki brought up a point, and he looked up a website. So I'm gonna let Jeannie go, and then Colin. I'm sorry, Colin. I just want to make sure that we keep some. We don't have people yelling at each other. So I know you get it, Colin. So don't worry about it. But I'm gonna unmute you guys now.
yeah, I already said that he did buy teeth from somebody. And presumably it was indentured slaves, but did that really happen, or did someone just take some piece of information and just assume that's what he did with the teeth? Because most of his teeth were made out of ivory, and that is why they thought that they were made out of wood, because they turned brown, because ivory must turn colors, when you're trying to eat off of them. So, I get that uh, the information is in different areas, done in different ways, but it doesn't mean that those teeth went into George Washington's mouth, because he had dentists doing stuff. So maybe it was for somebody else. You just don't know. But they know proof positive that he used ivory and other things in his mouth as well.
So I'm just gonna jump in here and just say, let's try to veer back to the original spirit of the topic, which was the story of the woman with the neighbor who got elected to the school board, and she found out he was pro CRT, but that she and her husband still congratulated him, even though they don't really know him and he doesn't know them. So those kind of situations, and talking with people about CRT when we don't really know them. Dylan, you had your hand up. Um, is he still in here?
I think he got dropped. I'll bring him back up when he's
Oh,
back in.
okay. Okay. Colin, go ahead, please.
I actually do have something on the original, on basically what seat on the original idea is that if somebody wins, you should congratulate them, whether you agree with them or not. And if you have questions for them, talk to them, because they're now your elected official. So you should be talking to them, saying, "Hey, I don't agree with this position. When something like this comes up to a vote, I would like to give my opinion on it." You should definitely do that. That's what you're there for. That's what that elected official is there for. I've worked with many school board candidates lately. They are there to talk with their voters, their constituents, to make sure that they know what they want. So if you disagree with somebody, make it known. Make it, hey, we don't like this idea. We know that you support it. We'd like to work together. That's what you should be doing.
Well, Colin, you have an excellent point. I mean, these people are public servants and they should listen to us, even if we have different viewpoints. The only thing I disagree with you on is that I personally have a hard time congratulating the guy, knowing that he was a pro CRT and feeling like, he is going to indoctrinate children on these racist um, leanings or learnings. Let's see who else. Nikki.
So, excuse me. So, I actually want to come back to the Washington thing because I feel like it's a good example of what we're talking about here, because you have the primary source for this piece of information, the estate of the guy in question. Which, if there was ever going to be an organization that would try to protect the reputation of George Washington, it would be the George Washington estate. And there's a mentality out there in conservative circles that if you get an answer you don't like from a source of authority, go find someone who will tell you what you want to hear. If Mount Vernon is saying it's true, it's almost assuredly true, you know? And it's like, I can understand you wanting to hunt down something that would let you hang your hat on it, but like sometimes the bad stuff just happened, The Civil War was fought because of slavery, and like the slavery existed in this country, and like the internment camps existed and lynching existed, and we can decide that we don't want to teach our kids about those things. And what I heard in I forget who it was giving this example, answer was to some degree, well, even if it's true, do we really want kids to be learning about that? Was sort of the implication there. It wasn't said, but that's what it sounded like to me. And the answer is yeah. I didn't like being someone who grew up and then only found out when I was in college, grad school, out in the workforce, what like Reconstruction actually was and what it meant and what the implications of that were. And I think that one of the things Republicans are kind of, I guess, afraid of is the idea that kids are going to be taught to see America through a racial lens, i.e., to appreciate how other people, non-white people, look at the world, and that's suddenly going to make them lifelong Democrats, which could not be further from the truth, because there are Black people out there who very much see the world through that same lens, and they
Okay.
vote for Republicans.
All right,
And
Nikki.
so I think that
Wrap up.
it's this desire to run away from difficult things and run back to, well, we can just win over white people for all time, and not try to understand how people of color are seeing the world, and not try to teach our kids to understand how people of color are seeing the world, that is preventing the Republican Party from being able to have the kind of long-term structural power that it so deeply, deeply wants. So, I mean, I think what happened yesterday is related in large part to the GOP's fear of having their kids learn about racism.
Okay, Nikki. So CRT is not all about history and some of it not being taught and all that. CRT is teaching white children that they are oppressors and that they are racist. It's not the curriculum that I have seen in many, many, many places is all divisive. It is not, hey, I'm a Black person and I want you to put yourself in my shoes and see what I see. It's not that at all. It's like, you're a white person, you're bad. And that is not what we should be teaching children. Dylan, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, so while I do see the merit of your point, Katz, I do tend to agree with Nikki more so in this. Not to the extremes of CRT, and I do see what you mean. I've seen some of the school board meetings and what they bring up. But I think you can split modern CRT into two categories, more of a sexual type education that goes beyond, the one video we saw in eighth grade, and the more, darker parts of history. Enslavement, internment camps, torture, napalming children in, Vietnam and bombing them in Syria. So, like, there's plenty of points there. I do think that those parts need to be taught to children. However, I don't necessarily think they need to be harped on continuously. I don't think that it's necessarily a good thing to just teach children, how awfully brutal the world is. Obviously, not to keep them naive, but there are some very complex and, very long-term issues that I don't think, sixth graders entirely ready to learn about. Same thing with science class. You don't start off with like learning the entire periodic elements and, what a boson is and what are quarks. You start off with like, what's hydrogen, and then work your way up to just simple molecules, and then every year you build up a little bit more of understanding. I don't think that critical race theory or any of these things are necessarily good in the format that they're just too concentrated. I also don't think there's necessarily critical thought being put into it. Well, I do agree on the method of how the school boards do choose to disseminate the information. You are elected to that body and you get a choice. I think that, parents do have a choice in that. Now, hiding the truth from children, I mean, well, par for the course of the United States government, but still being able to decide what your child learns is still a right as a parent. But there is a note to be made that, they do deserve to learn the truth. Now, painting, one entire race, one way or another isn't necessarily correct. That's wrong. But knowing your history, the good and the bad parts, is important to understanding your civilization and where you come from in the world. Being able to empathize and understand how other people might not have the world in the same way that you have, and specifically understanding the struggles that they may have had at perhaps the hands of your ancestors or their own, is an important life lesson that I think all human beings need to have, especially Americans, because I will say, I just came back from Mexico, and the number of entitled Americans and Canadians that I saw, holy shit. Don't even ask them how they pronounce jalapeno. You don't want to know. So I do think that there is a point to be made that learning from another perspective that is perhaps uncomfortable and makes your stomach squirm is good for you. Now, not to the point where, your child's coming home wondering, why you're Nazi, or whether grandpa was, but to know that, there's other perspectives than your own in a first world country where you have running electricity and water 24/7. And also to know the impacts of how you got to where you are. So I think that it is important. However, there are notes to be had about the level of information that's given and whether too much too soon is going to be detrimental, and whether that has a lasting impact that is more hurtful than helpful to their understanding and world point in view. But that's what I have to say.
And, I completely agree with you that there's nothing wrong with the children being taught different perspectives. Absolutely not. But unfortunately, the modern CRT that's being taught has delved away from that more into a divisive white people bad. And I mean, that's not good for anyone, not anyone at all. Colin?
I have one question for you, Cats, and that is, can I get your source material? What material are you seeing? Alan, see the exact material. Are you seeing that shows these white people bad messaging?
Oh, I can get you plenty of it, Colin. I'm not going to get it right now because I'm in the middle of this, but I sure would be glad to send you quite a bit. It would keep you busy for many days. And not only does it talk about, what I'm talking about in general, but it has proof documents showing, this ideology, which is just not good for children. So, if you want to give me some time to get that to you, I would certainly be glad to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely. Jeannie?
I think along with the white people bad is also, you know, uh, white privilege, etc. And that is taught in school. My daughter is a school teacher, and we kind of go round and round about, some of the stuff that they need to learn about, even though they're not necessarily teaching it to their students. And the stuff that people come up with is just, to me, just asinine. Uh, so it's there, it's in the schools, how a teacher presents it. It's probably different in every classroom because it's not like they have a book that they're teaching from on some of these issues. Because if you had a book teaching CRT, people would probably get pretty mad, but they still get that information into, the minds of innocent children. And I know there was one section where they were talking about, white people, are oppressing everybody, uh, and it was like, well, if I'm oppressing people, what do my Hispanic grandchildren, think of me? I'm not oppressing them, but they're being in their own uh, different ways being taught the same, that white people are bad, and you have to take everybody's feelings into account no matter what you're doing. And sometimes, it's at the detriment of white people.
Yeah, it's all divisive and it's wrong and it's sad. Um, Christina, welcome to the Conservative Political Forum. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm driving right now from New York City to upstate New York, the capital region, and my dad was listening in, and um, I just had a lot of questions of what information is being shared. I'm a former New York City high school principal. I've been a veteran educator for over 20 years. I have my own consulting company now. But um, CRT, as in critical race theory, versus CRT, culturally responsive teaching, are two very distinct things. And I feel like they're being used interchangeably, and that's misleading. Critical race theory is a graduate level law based um, theory. It's not being taught in schools as a curricular like it's that's not possible because academic students are not able to be doing graduate level legal studies, if that makes sense. Is Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
So why is it continuing to be discussed as if it were? Culturally responsive teaching is distinct from critical race theory.
And how would you describe that? What would be the definition?
So, culturally responsive teaching is basically trying to recognize and honor the dignity of all people and understanding that we all have intersectional identities, right? So, I've been hearing a lot of sort of blanket statements about, CRT is teaching children that all white people are bad. Neither of the CRTs that I was describing would say that all white people are bad. What critical race theory, and it is it's a theory, so you can argue there's other counter theories, but the theory basically says that the way all of our systems are structured, whether that's education, whether that's the medical field, the legal field, business, that because of dynamics of who has been in power and who has had power the most. If we just look at our country's brief history, white men they're the founding fathers, right? They had the right to vote. And this was not even just all white men, it was white men of a certain class, right, having affluence, were the ones that were in power, and many of the structures they had in place kept them in power. Women had to fight for the right to vote. People of color had to fight for the right to vote. Um, and so there are things throughout our history that you can trace back some of the systemic inequities that we see and hear today are not just the cause of individual decisions. And it's not an either or, right? It's not that people are fated to something or it's only the system. Obviously, there is this dance and play between people's individual actions that they take in conjunction with the systemic things that are placed on them. So, as it relates to CRT in the more education sense, the culturally responsive teaching is basically just saying we need to understand that there are intersectional identities that everybody has. It's not just race, gender, religion, um, your socioeconomic status, your citizenship status, your language status, and even things beyond that. Things like it can be what where you are in terms of your like sibling. Like, are you a older child, younger child, middle child? We have all these different intersectional identities that we have, and then we have this combination of lived experiences as a result of the identities that we hold. So it's like, if I am, some identities though are visible immediately, and people, it's going to affect not only how you engage with the world, but how others engage with you. And that's what it's trying to bring a consciousness to.
Thank you, Christina. Appreciate that. So, what I'm seeing is referred to as critical race theory. So, whether it's sort of devolved from whatever was originally taught in law schools or colleges, I have no idea. I have no exposure to that particular curriculum. I just know that what's in the K through 12 is referred to as critical race theory. And there have been numerous governors all across this country who have banned it in K through 12. So if it didn't exist in K through 12, why would they be bothering to ban it? There's plenty of evidence of it being in the curriculum, and it being in the curriculum in a very divisive way, um,
So,
confusing to young children. And I'm sorry, this is a short segment and we're over on the time. So we do have to wrap it up and go on to our next segment. Since, I'm talking, it's kind of hard to find an example and post it. But as I'm able to, I will find at least one example for the moment and post it, because it does have proof of the actual documentation of what, is in the curriculum. So we're going to move on to the next segment. I appreciate everyone, and your thoughts on this topic. And Jason, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to close with something on this. I 100% can say that racism theory is being taught in schools, and we're going to open a forum sometime, and you all will be invited to talk about it. I have an educator friend of mine who was forced to take these classes in Washington State, and she has a 100%. She can tell you that it was being told to her that she's white and that she has, and I don't want to go there right now because we need to move on because we have an election happened yesterday, so we want to get into the next segment. But we will have this we'll back to this conversation with my educator friend at some point. I'm going to try to get her in here so we can talk about it. And I'd love to have Christine here too. Sorry, I hope I didn't brutalize your name. Just to talk about it because we want to get understanding on what's going on. And kind of go from there. So it's great to have, all of our points of view here and to get understanding from where everybody's seeing it. And Colin's in school, so I know he sees a different perspective. I like hearing his perspective. I mean, we all have a different perspective on it, and so that's really good. But before we go to the next topic, which will be pretty much about election for the next hour, about how you guys are feeling, Katz, please read the guidelines before we go there.
Okay, Jason, I'll be glad to. All righty, let me get that opened up here. And here we go. As freedom thinkers in the Conservative Political Forum, we believe in and value our constitutional rights. We recognize that amongst ourselves, we're going to have varied opinions. I mean, we just saw examples of that. This forum is a safe place for everybody. We don't tolerate personal attacks, and we don't raise voices. We also please ask that you are considerate of persons who prefer not to hear profanity. Think of it as a PG space. It is recorded, and folks might listen to it later on with maybe young children in earshot and don't want to hear that. Please be self-aware of your mic time when we're having discussions because we want to make sure that everyone who wants to contribute to a particular topic is able to do that.
Thank you, Katz. I'm so glad you guys are here. We are going to talk for the next hour. We're going to go through how everyone's feeling. We've got Democrats, we've got conservatives. Everybody's going to have an opinion on how they're feeling about this election. But I know you didn't raise your hand, Mitty, but I'm going to call on you first because you said something last night that I really liked hearing from your perspective on where you're at with this and the fifth, how you feel our country is. I hope you don't mind that I'm putting you on the spot, but I just want you to bring up your perspective, Mitty, on this, if that's okay. And then we're going to go through the room and just raise your hand and let's talk about how you're feeling about yesterday's election and what's going on and everything. And we're just going to have a nice, good discussion about it and just see where everybody's at because, everybody's in different area. Everybody's in a different place in their minds right now. And Nikki came up with something early when we first started the forum before the room got dropped. I love what Nikki had to say about how he's there for us. He understands where conservatives are coming from and how we feel. So, but Mitty, will you bring that up? Are you okay with that? I'm sorry I put you on the spot.
No, it's fine. So I think probably kind of along the lines of what Nikki said, that like we know how this feels because we've been there. And I actually, I should try to find it and send it to you guys. But I wrote this like kind of essay after the 2020 election, seeing what conservatives were kind of going through with the, week-long counting and everything, and how everything that they thought they understood was just not the way it ended up, because I felt the exact same way in 2016. And so I think there's a lot more like that we are going through the same things and we don't even know that it's a mirror image of each other. And last night I think I was saying something about how like we're just destined to be a 50-50 country. It just really feels like that sometimes. And last night was no different. That's what it showed. People gain in one place, they lose the same in another place. So it's just always 50-50. And since we're not going to dominate each other, we should probably stop trying to do that and just listen to each other and um, figure out how to live with each other. And I think like each other where we can, which is what I like you guys, because I think there's a lot more that we can actually like, like hanging out with each other than just get along. But at the very least, we need to learn to get along because we aren't going to be able to get rid of half the country. So that's, we're all Americans in the end.
I love it. Thank you, Mitty, for that. And you can, if you got anything else this hour, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. But let's go around the room. I mean, raise your hand if you've got something about how you're feeling, and just nobody's attacking anybody on here. Just tell us how you feel, and I'm sure Nikki will have some good pointers for you because he's been doing this stuff for a long time too, and I love that about his experiences. And I know everybody's got experiences, but Dylan, yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
Hi, my name is Dylan. I've been sober for 3 days, and this is how I feel. No, I'm kidding. This isn't an AA meeting.
Dylan, I know that's not true.
No, I know. I had a fucking. What did I have? I had a really good margarita in Mexico just yesterday.
Yeah.
Anyways, they're just totally fine. The drinking age is 18. But so one interesting thing was, I mean, even I kind of jumped on it as like a joke for copium for the left, but I think a lot of Republicans were overhyping table issues. There were a lot of people who were just, dead set that, oh my gosh, it's gonna be gas prices, inflation. How can they not possibly see that like their world's collapsing around them? And for a lot of people, it's really not. I mean, it's kind of sucked, and that's the thing is, and I mean, actually, Nikki might know this, but it's like Jewish story about a rabbi. This guy lives with his wife in his house, and he's unhappy because it's small. And anyways, the rabbi just keeps telling him to add animals and add animals and add animals and add animals into his house. It's like chickens and sheep and mice, and it just keeps getting progressively bigger until he comes back and he's like, "Hey, now what?" And he's like, "Get rid of them all." And he's like, okay." And then he's like, "Wow, it feels so spacey and roomy." And it's kind of just like you go with your environment. A lot of people just start subconsciously budgeting. A lot of people just, it's just a hard crunch, and you tighten your belt to fit the squeeze. And so, until the circus runs out of bread, I don't think anyone's going to really be sincerely open to taking such a heavy swing. And then when it comes to what Mitty was saying about, an average, there's statistical probability with humans, specifically with trying to guess randomly, that you will, on average, not pick randomly, but a very distributed evenness to what you think is random. Like if you show a picture of complete randomness and a decently organized clutter of things, people will pick the evenly randomized to say that it's not randomized at all. It's pretty evenly spread. And so for people, you're going to have an entire spread of, millions of people. They're going to go one way or another, and it's going to average out. And it's going to keep averaging out because for every single person that flips, statistically averaged out, another person will flip the other direction. So you're just going to have these pockets of like enough random flips in one direction that maybe you flip a seat, but both sides are running out of like these talking point issues, and Republicans are going to start losing on a lot of issues, like specifically with the economy, with foreign trade, with immigration, with infrastructure deals, because they kind of been kicking the can down the road, like with pensions, like, hey, we're going to promise you this, we're going to promise you this when we win. And same thing with Democrats, like they get the House, they get the Senate, they get the presidency, and then they don't handle immigration, they don't handle Medicare, they don't handle this or they don't handle that because they're afraid of shaking the boat and losing the midterms. So I think there's going to be a point where it's either that they're going to pass something or the system's going to completely break, and then they're going to be stuck with an untenable situation where both parties are going to somehow lose to the libertarians, which would just be the funniest thing on earth. But it'll get to a bad point and a bad situation. But back to the midterms. So there were a lot of races, specifically at Fetterman and Oz, where Republicans are just absolutely just jaw dropped. Like there's no possible way. And the 5 stages of grief, where I think we're on 4 now today. So it's been definitely pretty hard for a lot of Republicans to see that, oh my God, how did this guy who's literally had a stroke 7 months ago get into office? And I think just Republicans are not understanding of the current political climate, and specifically of what issues actually matter to people and how to get their base to turn out. There's been Republican infighting. There were issues with pretty shoddy primaries. There were a lot of donations from the Democrats to specifically far right, or at least perceived far right MAGA individuals. And that seems to have actually affected the vote. I was kind of making jokes at Nikki, him for winning the election for us, but apparently that did not work at all. In fact, it kind of went back and bit some candidates in the rear. But so it's definitely not what people were expecting. And I think, what Mitty was saying, that you're going to have to look at it and be like, wait, this isn't what I wasn't expecting. Even those that were trying not to be in an echo chamber, I think made their own echo chamber of like a median. So it's like almost like a parting of the seas, and they just kind of sat there. Definitely not the worst outcome, but definitely not the best outcome. And I think the Republican strategy is going to have to be on stronger primaries to get better candidates, and specifically to actually start doing a damn thing, or else they're not going to have anything to stand on. Because currently, their entire voter base is people who are disgruntled with Democrats, and you can't run on that forever.
Well, and I'll say this, being from a very blue state, and I know my friend Preston, being from a very blue state. For us, we just wanted to see some red. We wanted to see some red in our states, and instead they got bluer, and it's really frustrating when you see that. It kind of gets you angry that you've got idiots in the state, that continue to vote for these idiots. So, Patty Murray is not a smart woman, and she's going to be it again, and she only got elected because of who, by Seattle, because of who she is. So, Nikki.
Happy days are here again, the skies above are clear again. So let's sing a song of cheer again. Happy days are here again. I don't know if you guys like Barbara, but that's sort of how I feel right now. I thought we were gonna lose 20 seats in the House. I thought you guys were gonna have a 15 seat margin, maybe a 20 seat margin. I thought, at a month ago, I thought we were going to keep the Senate. As of 2 days ago, I thought it was at best a coin flip, and that there was a good chance we were going to lose 51-49. So, talk about expectations. Colin, mute your microphone.
No, I'm hijacking your spot, Nikki. I hate you.
Yeah.
No, we got to hear what Nikki has to say. Come on, Colin.
Yeah, sorry.
You're after Nikki, so go ahead,
in
Nikki.
high school. Children are meant to be seen and not heard. We overperformed, and in politics, everything is about expectations, and we did much better than we expected to. You guys did much worse than you expected to. There are some things you're hanging your hat on, Florida, whatever, but it's the kind of things that people hang their hat on when they got absolutely schooled. And I will say, I think part of the reaction to this election depends on where you live. If you're in Texas, if you're in Florida, you're like, you know what? It's not so bad. If you're in Washington, you're like, this sucks, but it always sucks. It's like walking outside and it's raining. It's always effing raining in Washington. Like that's usual. If you're in Colorado, where you just got walloped worse than you've ever been walloped, and Democrats are on track to pick up seats in the state legislature and have won the governorship by California level margins, you're thinking of ways to commit suicide. Basically, is about how my Republican friends are feeling. I mean, they have lost. They are on par potentially. We'll see. It's going to be stupidly close to having an 8-2 margin among federal elected officials, because we have both senators and we're potentially going to have 6 out of 8 House seats. And they were thinking it was going to be 4-4, and potentially they would have picked up the Senate seat if they were really lucky. So it's a fucking, like, the red wedding was kind compared to what Colorado Republicans went through in the last 24 hours. And I think that that's part of what's driving the differing reactions to tonight is where people live.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you know, I hang my hat on other things because I know Washington doesn't have it. So I look at that stuff like Kerry Lake's still in it in Arizona, which I'm shocked. So I kind of look at that and I go, oh, she could still win. You never know. It's very close. And Colin, go ahead. How are you feeling? I know you're probably feeling joyous as well.
I was expecting a fucking. Sorry, no. I was
Yeah, let's
expecting
try to keep the F words out. Nikki started getting a little loose with his language, so.
Yeah, he's a bad influence. No. I was expecting really bad management. I was expecting to potentially lose 3 seats in the Senate. I was expecting to lose probably 30 House seats. I was not feeling good. And then I'm just this day I've said, wait, we have a chance. Very slim, but we have a chance to win to hold the House. We're probably gonna hold the Senate. No way. So I am like ecstatic right now. I am through the roof.
I'm going to give you a little shit, Colin, because I have your house projections from our prediction contest. And one of the reasons why you're doing as well as you are is because you predicted a lot of Democratic holds. And those Democratic holds are
Okay, Nikki,
not
you know why I
congruous.
made those predictions that way? Because I knew there'd be a lot of conservatives guessing a lot of our heavy predictions. So I wanted to take a more Democratic edge in case there was a need for that. It's called
Well, I'll
playing
tell you
to the
what.
content.
I see. So you felt one way, but you predicted another, which actually is not the worst thing. But I'm just saying your actual predictions do not match up with what you're saying you felt.
I can show you my actual predictions. I have screenshot them on my computer. Do not look like that.
All right.
By the way,
Okay.
Colin, a lot of conservatives, I'm like 1 point behind you in that poll, so I did very well.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I didn't know what other people looked like, so I wanted to take a more democratic route at it just in case.
Yeah, Jason was definitely the most sanguine among all the conservatives, and didn't get too high on his own hopium supply, and so far is doing better than everybody else from the R side of the aisle. We'll see if that holds up when the last 8 races get called, but so far I think Jason gets to take a victory lap, certainly.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad of it. I did my research though, so you know, and I did. There was one that I was like, oh, I'm just gonna stick this to Nikki, and I chose JD Vance because I was like, he JD Vance, he's gonna win, and he won, so I'm cool with that. That's one I hang my hat on. So, um, anyways, Shiloh, you've had your hand up for a while. How are you feeling about this stuff?
I'm actually kind of hopeful. I mean, I really just don't see this as a loss for Republicans. My my biggest, I guess, the thing would be is that we've seen all these polls and all of the people all over saying our country isn't on the right track. It's not on the right track, and then they go out and they vote the way that they voted, and it makes me absolutely crazy that we have this much party line of the blue no matter what or the red no matter what instead of voting on a policy. And I mean, particularly Washington. I mean, we've got a huge spike in crime. We've got dollar gas tax coming on the 1st of January. We've got business and sales tax going up. We've had multiple light rails promised, money taken, and never made. And yet people keep voting for it. And I can't fathom, with everything that we've seen the last couple of years, that people would go and vote to keep doing the same thing.
Well, I mean, I'll say, since we live in the same state, that what I see from that is the messaging. So I think that Jay Inslee coming out after Paul Pelosi got after the break into the Pelosi's house last Friday or Thursday, coming out and blaming Tiffany Smiley, Joe Kent, and Matt Larkin. I don't think that the messaging helps in those races and stuff. You know, I think
I
the
would call
message.
that an alleged break-in. I would
Yeah.
call it alleged.
Well, we don't know all the details. MSNBC came out with a real report and they removed it quickly because they got in trouble by their own network for misinformation. So there's a lot of things, but my point is the messaging by certain people was to push to try to say that. But you're right. I mean, we see crime, we see things going on here. People are getting murdered like at record rates in Seattle and Tacoma and Washington State because of some of the policies, and people are still voting for it. So I agree with you,
Well, in
Shiloh.
Eastern Washington we've hit winter. It is cold, cold, cold over here. We went from 50 degrees to 30 degrees in a day. And now we're also going to start seeing people freezing to death here. And I can't fathom why we've got all that money. And then you have the Daily Mail put out, after I guess Biden had a speech, they put out an article tonight saying he apparently said he's not going to change anything. Wasn't that the whole point of all of this, was that people wanted change?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And so that's where our frustration can be with some of this stuff, I'm sure, being conservatives and seeing what's going on. But I totally agree. Michael, how are you feeling?
Hey, Jason, I'm doing fine. As as far as I'm feeling, of the election, I feel like it's not the worst as someone said before, but it's also not the best. But I'm looking at the nation as a whole, and I feel like we could have done a lot worse than we did. But um, I guess I'm cautiously hopeful and optimistic, but I'm not to the point where I'm like crying in my drink or anything like that. But yeah, I'm okay, I think.
That's really good. And so I want to bring this up. I am not Washington sucks. It's stupid. I'm like, whatever. I'll move if I have to. Like, I won't stay here forever if I have to. And, but, so I look around it and it frustrates me, but I have hope that we're still the United States and we still, from my perspective as a conservative, if you're taking my conservative point of view, and everything. We're still the United States, and if Jay Inslee decides to do mandates again and masks, I'm not wearing one. He can kiss my, you know what? I'm not doing it, and I'm just going to start living in freedom again, and start, being who I am. So I have total understanding, but if you cross the country, I look at places where there were victories, and it gives me hope. To be honest with you, Florida gives me hope. Like you're saying, Nikki, we hang our hats on that. Yes, I do hang my hats on Florida. I hang my hats on the fact that the man running Florida is probably going to be the president of the United States someday. And that man he speaks well. He is very articulate, and he does, I think he's going to be an amazing president when he is. And so I do hang my hat on those things. And I look at the things where there are the victories, and you have to look at that. We're in a deep blue state where I live, but I still hang my hat on the fact that Joe Kent has a possibility of still winning here. And if we get Joe Kent in the House at least, I will say we got some sort of a victory here in Washington State, because we're not getting many victories and from the Republican side of things. And so, but then I also look at us as a country, and I say I'm gonna keep doing what I do to bring a healing process for us to learn how to work together as we're starting a new thing. I mean, a group of people, with MIDI and all of us are we want the we're Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and cats and everybody. We just want to learn how to communicate and get along. But Dr. G, go ahead. You got the microphone.
I'd like to think I'm the guy you're talking about from Florida, but well, not yet anyway.
Yeah, you are. You are. Come on now. Bring the
Listen,
Florida love over to this space so we can kind of, for the conservatives, give us hope.
We're in the middle of getting douched by Nicole right now. We just had our second or third power outage, so I'm not going to be very long, but I would like to say one thing. To the people who are concerned about the quote unquote red drizzle or lack of a wave, let me just give you an analogy. The person who graduates last in a medical school class is still considered doctor. So if you have a C grade, although I don't know if I'd want you taking care of me, but if you have a C grade, you still pass medical school and you graduate. So whether we come out with the Congress elevated, we make the Senate by a one or two, or we still are on, we're 50-50, that's still a win in my book. So the perspective that I think needs to be understood is that we're not going to be slamming this. So when you hear guys like Cacciarella, or some of these other pundits, David Hogg, who I just irritates the hell out of me, all these Floridian people saying all these Gen Xers are setting the goals, which is fine. I'm glad they voted. It speaks to their activism and what have you. It doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, Congress is still going to be Republican. The Senate is likely going to still be Republican, if not tied, because we're at 49 now and we're still going to win. And whether or not they play games in Arizona, or whether or not they play games with Herschel Walker, which depending on which of the latest research you're reading is bullshit or not, we're still going to be pretty much close. I don't see the Democrats getting three, and I see us getting at least two. So that said, we'll either be tied or we'll be ahead, but I don't consider that a loss. So again, whether it's a red drizzle or we still won, we still won. So I'm not seeing a negative thing here, and I want to give Mike a prop here and saying it's not such a bad thing. He did say it, and I agree with it. Now, as far as DeSantis, um, just to speak to this thing that I'm hearing a lot of people going, well, DeSantis and Trump are going at it. Have you guys ever heard of political play? And I know Nikki's ears are going to start burning in a minute, but just be gentle with me because I can't stay on to defend myself after this. But as far as I'm concerned, I think this is just political play. I saw something on, was it Mark Levin or one of those shows that they already brokered this way in advance. So if you don't think they're playing some political, back and forth, you guys probably are a little more naive than I thought. But I don't see this being an issue. I think Trump is just throwing his weight around. I mean, if you saw Marco Rubio the night of his rally, and he did incredibly well, and I'm so glad Val Demings is out. That said, they were best of friends and arm in arm through his entire rally. I expect there'll be some drama back and forth, and I know Jason, this irritates you, and it irritates a lot of us. I mean, I don't particularly care for it. I don't see any gain in it, but I think Trump has to keep his behavior to what some level of expectation is. If he suddenly turns himself down, or the intensity of him down, the likelihood is that he's going to end up taking some chin music for that too. So I don't know if that's necessarily a great thing or a wrong thing, but I just see this political play. And so far, I've been pretty much right on all my predictions on Florida anyway. So I don't see this as an issue. But if anybody mistakenly thinks that Trump and DeSantis are not in communication with each other, I would probably take that bet in a minute. But anyway, listen, I love all you guys. I just wanted to check in. And I think yesterday, Jason, you did a spectacular job. I was purposely up till you closed it. But I'd like to see that you keep these events going. Maybe you could do Super Bowl Sunday and some other events, like your individual events. I think that'd be kind of cool. But anyway, that's my political opinion, and I'm going to listen in the background. And forgive me if I don't respond, but I am at work. Okay, take care.
Hey, thanks, Dr. G. Appreciate it. And Super Bowl Sunday, huh? That'd be kind of cool. I love football. I want to make sure I enjoy the game, but afterwards, maybe I could do something like that. That'd be a good idea. Sean just joined the room. So let's get Sean's opinion on how he's feeling about the election and everything that's been going on.
It was pretty disappointing, to be honest. My friends lost New Hampshire. That was kicking the side, but we'll learn from it. We'll move on, and we'll do better next time.
So give us a little more, Sean, because I like hearing what you have to say about this. Just what can be done to change some of the areas that are really blue, in your opinion?
We can run better candidates, I guess. We can try to reach more moderate voters. We can try to not run such terrible attack ads, which I guess people aren't really liking. We can. I think that's probably what we have to do.
You should run on not allowing text messages, political text messages. Outlaw those.
Mitty, I sent over 1,000 text messages on Tuesday. You'd be so proud of me.
I hate you.
Hey, Missouri 7th, Missouri 7th, if you can drop out of the room and come back in, it'll probably fix the problem. I'll get you up to speak. So try doing that because for some reason I'm sending you speaker invites and it's not working. And same with Cats, and we want you to be able to speak in here. Yeah, no, I agree. I will say this, Sean Monson's show out here in Seattle, he said that Washington needs to have run excited to see. Tiffany Smiley went from grassroots and got to where she was, and maybe running again or running for governor or something in a couple years. Maybe now that her name is known, could be something. I mean, I don't know if Tiffany's done running and everything, but yeah, I mean, better candidates. I agree, Sean. I think that's the biggest thing for some of these other areas that are blue. I know some of our other friends that live in blue areas that would like to have seen some change and were disappointed, and then they're not here tonight, like Matt and stuff. But I do think that the quality of candidates has to improve, and in order for some change to happen. Dylan.
I was just gonna ask how Mr. and Mrs. Checkmark feel now that they're verified.
It's good not being one of the plebs like you, Dylan.
Mr. and Mrs. Checkmark. That's wonderful.
Over my dead body. I mean, I might actually get it, but
Yeah,
just
you'll be there soon enough. Don't worry.
yeah,
I know.
I will. You're right.
$8.
Android users can't even do it. I'm going to do it once I can, but
Wait,
Android
I have
users.
my
I was
main
I was
account, but I
upset
can't
to
get
hear
it
that,
on this
Jason.
one because I
Well, wait,
changed
Sean,
my.
you have a check mark?
What'd you say?
Sean, you have a check mark?
Yeah,
You
he
gotta
does.
update your Twitter to see it.
Yeah.
Okay, let me update my Twitter. I'll be right back.
It shouldn't take too long, I hope, for Android users to get it.
I'm sure it'll come out soon. But what I was going to say was, I have it on my main account, but I get it on this one because unfortunately, I change my profile picture on here more often than Sean changes his gender, and so they would not let me keep my.
All right, now get rein it in before I come over to Denver and overthrow the government there, and replace it with Republicans. I swear to God, I will.
That's a threat.
And he is taller than you, Nikki. I know this for a fact, right? So
He's many things more than me.
Oh no, I'm not
so
threatening with violence. I'm threatening with political pain.
That's even
Stone Cold
worse.
Stunner, Stone Cold
Or
Stunner.
something in your tea.
Yeah, put something in my tea. I'm sure it'll be. But hey, I mean, you won't have to work too hard. I mean, we had a dead guy here who won with 100% of the vote. So it's like
How many dead people won last night? Is that real?
multiple dead people. Only one of which Sean was.
That's actually really sad. If I could say so, I think that's.
In fairness, he didn't have a challenger, but.
It's such a red area, Jason, that Democrats decided, you know what, we're not even going to run an opposition candidate, so they just want to give it to him.
The thing is that the guy who won, the guy who died, was just such an incredible candidate that it really wasn't surprising after he put away a fairly weak primary challenger that he didn't go contested in the general election.
Austin Hine was not fairly weak. We nearly.
I can't tell if you're being serious or not. It's so.
I'm almost never being serious.
I know.
Especially when I'm talking to Sean, I'm usually just trying to trigger him. That's generally my goal. So.
Way to go, Cole.
I've learned from having people try to trigger the libs that now I know how to trigger the lib. Yeah, libertarian. Yeah, okay.
That wasn't a very good joke.
No, it was.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to see Dylan was Dylan gonna say something and then he didn't finish because of the blue check mark comment or what?
Oh, I mean, besides making a joke about whatever Sean puts in Nikki's coffee being bio safe to eat if you're a twink, I mean, not really.
Okay.
So, and I would just like to say, by the way, that it's not just Republicans when it comes to election outcomes and polling that might not always be living recognizing the world for what it is. I was just chatting with Dylan over Twitter, and he seemed to think that that all gays were like the older white men in the Castro that he idolizes. And I'm just here to tell you, Dylan, that Citibank is right, and that there are gay people outside of the Castro, and you need to stop trolling for a daddy on Grinder, and
Funny,
find yourself.
funny.
So,
If you're looking for a
Colin,
daddy,
did you have
though,
your
I'm
hand
good.
raised about how you're
Sorry, go ahead.
Colin, did you have your hand raised about something about the election?
Honestly, I totally forgot why I raised my hand. Oh,
All right,
wait,
so
no.
you
What
can
are all
remember
y'all's?
once.
Well, I actually do remember. What are all y'all thoughts on what looks like the tipping race could end up being Colorado's third, Lauren Boebert's district? That could end up being the tipping point.
For the
I
House,
say
I'm
it's
telling you right now, the House is still going to the Republicans.
That
So,
is not necessarily true, Jason.
yeah.
That's true. Everything,
mm,
Colin. Literally
It's
everything.
it's looking that way. I'd certainly say that it's leaning that way, but there is a path that Colin is talking about. A friend of ours sent over a spreadsheet that looks at which races have been called, and there's absolutely a path where basically, if some of the California seats drift to Democrat, the toss up ones that are still exist, and everything else basically stays the same, then the only remaining seat, the one that is the closest, is Colorado third. It's Lauren Boebert. And can I just say
she's
that
catching up, though. Am I correct?
what you say, it's a coin. I mean, it is 300 votes.
It's back and forth. I think the Democrats up right now by like 50 votes, and then it goes back and forth.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it sounds like it's just going to be back. Like I live in Colorado. I have a ton of political friends in Colorado. I probably have better sources than most people on what the hell's going on, and everyone I know is basically saying from what they've seen today from the most recent votes that you're talking about a double digit margin, so 20, 30, 50 votes either way, and it's just going to be back and forth over the military ballots and the provisionals and that kind of stuff. So
All right, thank you, Dylan.
Oh, I was gonna say, Nikki, I don't know if you paid attention or anyone else in here to CA13. I remember bringing it up because it's literally right above me, and it was the only like competitive Republican race that was in a D plus, I think 13. But looking at it from the New York Times and what they've reported, only 50% report, but it's like 50.41 to like 49.8 between John Duarte and Adam Gray. So like that one's really close either way too in California. Does that change any of the House races, whether the Republicans win it or not?
yeah, so that's one of those races that we would have to win. Basically, all the toss-up races in California right now would have to break our way, which is not an unreasonable thing to predict because generally there's a blue shift in California. Sorry, I meant to say California. In the days after the election, because that's when all of the late mail ballots get counted, and that's all of the stoners who mailed their ballots on election day. Basically, all the young people who are like, I won't do it, and then their moms tell them to do it. So the late mail,
Dylan,
yeah,
I
pretty much
did it
that.
2 days before, thank you very much. And I
Yeah,
tried to get my mother to vote, and she didn't even want to do it. So don't even at me.
Dylan, that's
so
exactly the votes they're waiting on.
right, we're waiting on your
Well,
vote, and
it's
so,
all Republican except for that one hand.
but yeah, so that typically is what happens. So it's not unreasonable to predict that there'll be a couple of points blue in the next couple of days. The question is how many, and depends on the district. So it's going to be close-ish. What I'll also say is, yes, technically, the Republicans may get a 2 or a 3 seat majority. It is quite possible, but the it is not that is not necessarily a world that will be particularly fun for Republicans to live in when you have a massively divided caucus like the Republicans do right now. Nancy Pelosi was able to hold together a 4-seat majority because Nancy Pelosi is basically a dominatrix with a very, very large whip, and she knows how to use it. And by contrast, Kevin McCarthy does not have a grip on the Freedom Caucus. He does not have a grip on the crazy parts of the Freedom Caucus, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz. And when that's your majority, is 3 people, and you're dealing with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz, like, good luck getting your, National Defense Authorization Act bill passed without help from the Democrats. Good luck.
I'll still take
the
Republicans leading over the Democrats having it still, because we're screwed if the Democrats have it, because they're just going to keep doing this totalitarian stuff they're doing. So,
because here's the thing, the benefit that you get out of having the majority, is stopping us, but it's also being able to push messaging bills and set up the Republican message for the 2024 elections. Here's what we would do if you gave us the White House. And without that ability to do that in a coordinated fashion, you just end up looking like the guys who can't shoot straight. You end up looking like the guys who can't make the lunch for everybody, trying to show off what you do if you bankroll the restaurant. Like, you end up sending the message that we don't know how to govern. And instead of that, the alternative you could have is giving Democrats a 1 or 2 seat majority, which would be hard for us to use to get jack of anything done, putting Biden in a position where we've had government for 4 years, and then, giving voters the idea of like, well, what have they done in the last 2 years with their, So from my perspective, you're right. It's better in terms of what you could stop us from having. I think it's actually better for us in terms of a winning in 2024 to not have control of just the House. The Senate, I totally agree. I would be fucking pissed if we lost the Senate because of judges, because of letting you guys pass legislation all the way through, even if they're forcing Biden to veto it. But for just the House, I mean, if we're talking about a 1 seat either way, we're probably not getting much done anyway with a 1-seat majority, a 2-seat majority. That is hard to deal with. But at least we can blame you in terms
and I
of
can
what's
say
going on.
Dan Bongino, who I respect, he's a Secret Service agent, he has a lot of stuff, believes that the Senate race could still, it should be 50-50, but there's quite a chance that we can still get a 51-49 lead, and that's what I'm hoping for. I know there's a runoff but Alaska could still be going our way. And so Dan Bongino
Alaska
believes...
will be Republican either way.
Yeah, Alaska's going to be Republican either way.
Yeah, but Dan Bongino believes that there's still a possibility. And as far as the House, he brought up a lot of that stuff today, how we need the House, and we need the House as Republicans. But he talked about some things that I think are important. He says a lot of Democratic seats are up in 2 years, Senate and House seats, and that a lot of people are not happy with some of the stuff the Democrats are doing, and that those could go Republican too. I'm not going to get my hopes up on all that, but I am going to keep hope, just like, I'm just going to keep my hope that things are going to get better, because at some point they have to do what Mitty said. I mean, we got to be we're going to have some balance. I mean, it's not going to be always Democrat. It's not going to always be Republican, but so he's talked a lot about that, and I respect that part. But as far as the seats and stuff, I get where you're coming from, Nikki, but I'm still I want us to have the House. I mean, I'm not a fan of Kevin McCarthy. He's very much, to me, a guy that kind of goes with whatever's going on. He does. That's what I feel like he does. And so, but he'd be better than having Nancy Pelosi in there, who I can't stand her. She needs to go. Colin,
I did have I had a follow-up question for
oh,
Nikki.
go ahead, Dylan.
I had a follow-up question for Nikki real quick. So Nikki, for senators like Sinema, do you see any dino hunters coming for her seat when she's up for re-election? And people like her in the Senate who are like a poison pill to the Democrats' majority if they get it?
Oh yeah, Ruben Gallego is going to run a primary campaign, 100%.
So they're gonna start trying to take out people like Cinema, and I don't remember the other one.
You mean Manchin?
Manchin, yes.
No, nobody's going to come after Joe Manchin. Everybody likes Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin was willing to play
Apparently
ball,
not MIDI.
and
No,
everybody
yeah, we're
knows
not going to go after him. I agree with Nikki.
Oh, okay.
everybody knows Joe Manchin's in an impossible to win state for anybody else.
Dan
Kirsten
Bongino says
Sinema,
he's gone in 2 years, though. He says he will
well,
not be there. He's going to retire or he's going to be gone.
I haven't seen any
And
announcement from him one way or the other. But what I will say about
but
Kirsten
I believe.
is
Go ahead.
Kirsten Cinema is the best word I could use for her is in the words of Barbara Bush, it rhymes with runt, and she is. Thank you.
Geez.
Somebody got the joke.
No, it's just bad.
Yeah, I get the joke, but I'm not gonna. We're not gonna have
I
the.
really don't like that woman.
I feel like it goes against the guidelines of the conservative.
No, Colin,
political
stop it.
forum.
I did.
Yeah, we got it, Colin. We understand. Okay, go ahead, Nikki. Go on without bringing that up again.
She is absolutely awful, and we're gonna lose the Senate either way in 24. Like, there's no way. It is absolutely impossible for us to keep the Senate. No way in the world that we keep the Senate in 24. I would rather take her out and replace her with somebody who was an actual Democrat in the mold of like Mark Kelly, or ideally someone who was a person of color like Gallego. And it's worth it to me to take the risk, assuming correctly that we're effed in the Senate anyway in 24. So,
Which we are.
yeah, it's 47 seats or something. Like, I mean, it could be the biggest blue wave, and we wouldn't keep the Senate in 24 just because of which seats are up.
So you agree with what I was telling you about then, with what Dan was saying about some of the seats, because that's what he was saying.
Oh yeah, 2024 is a terrible map for us, and we're
awful map for us for 24. So,
how many Democrats are retiring from the Senate in 2024?
We don't know the exact number yet, but it's expecting to be pretty high.
I mean, that's the thing, is you don't announce at this point whether Manchin will retire. I have no idea. He hasn't said.
I think he will, but yeah, I know what you mean.
But like, why vote the way he did on? Why drive such a hard bargain on all of this stuff, other than to set himself up for a more comfortable, like, maybe it was just ideological, but he pushed very hard on Build Back Better, and the thought was among everybody that he was planning to run for election. He's not that old, he's not.
No, but he's going to be buried alive for passing that Inflation Reduction Act. So he caved in on that.
But why not cave a lot sooner if you weren't planning to run for re-election? No, you're not going to be running for re-election. You can do whatever the heck you want. So
I really hope my favorite Senator Tester stays.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. We've got a bunch of good people from a bunch of red states, and they'll retire if they think they're absolutely going to get creamed, because nobody wants to run in that situation, most likely. Yeah, we're just going to lose a lot of really. I mean, Sherrod Brown in Ohio, I think, is also up.
Are you guys going to lose Romney's seat?
What?
So hold on. Colin has his hand up, and Dr. G had put his hand up. I want to make sure that we can get to what they were going to say. Colin,
be seen and not heard. What?
Nikki, when you use that joke enough, it gets tiring, just like your political career. Okay.
Woo.
Okay. So
be nice. You need to be nice to your grandfather. I mean, yeah.
Was that a dig?
Wait, what did you say?
Funny you say that. We saw him on show his video, like a video of himself the other day, and he has a giant beard.
Yes, I do. I'm not the only person on Twitter Spaces who has a beard. Unfortunately, what I'm talking about is up here. No, I was thinking of Ryan.
That doesn't count. Oh,
I've tried to grow a beard. I'm incapable of growing a decent looking beard.
I have to have a beard at all times. Anyways,
can I?
I have a beard, but I have to have one at all times. But
poor
anyways,
Colin.
Dr.
Go ahead,
G,
Colin. Sorry, Colin. Didn't get to say anything.
All right, go. Let's because I want to see what Dr. G had to say, and I know he's working, he's dealing with that stuff.
I just wanted to remind everybody that Rick Scott's up for election in 2024, and that we'll have another interesting wave-ish thing going on in Florida. And no, I'm not immediately going to run. My wife would kill me, but believe me, having been to Rick Scott's office, I would like nothing more than to see another Republican take his place.
Definitely. And not some of the ones that tried to fight this year, right? Nikki Fried and
No, I don't think Nikki Fried or Val Deming are going to go anywhere. And personally, maybe one of the local new Republican Congress people will take a swing at it, because if I see Val Deming or Rick Scott or even Governor Christ start running again, I'm going to have second thoughts about where I live. But we'll get to that later. But anyway, I just wanted to remind everybody that Florida's up for another re-election in 2 years, so it'll definitely be interesting to let lunatics come out and play.
that's a good point too. All right, Colin, go ahead.
I want to touch on something that you said about if Republicans winning, McCarthy becoming speaker. I do not think if Republicans win, let's say it's a 220 to 215 margin, I do not believe McCarthy will become speaker. I think anyone in the House could become speaker within reason at that point, because we're going to be in a game where people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, Bob Good are all on one side of the Republican Party, and people like Ryan Fitzpatrick and Don Bacon on the more moderate side, and you have the establishment on the Republican side. Then you have all the Democrats with their factions. I feel like this could really be a faction war, and there could be a speaker fight that lasts a couple days publicly on January 3rd, 4th, and 5th. When people are sworn in and all that type of stuff.
I would disagree slightly, which is to say that the incentive to work things out in private is so massive for the House and for the Republicans that they will do that. But they will. Now, the one thing that could screw them up is if there's a recount fight and it's for like control, or it's for like, a 1 seat difference or something like that. So if it was a question of, do we have 2 seats or 1 seat, and it goes for a month with fighting between Boebert and Frisch or whatever for that, or something like that. But other than that, they're going to have a month, or they're going to have 2 months, basically month and a half, to make a decision on this kind of thing. And really, there's only a handful of people who can run. You're not going to elect a freshman for speaker. You're not going to elect somebody that just became, a member 2 or 3 years ago that, hasn't been on any of the committees, because the rank and file members would never go for it. Like, they've been.
So Dan Bongino said that maybe like Jim Jordan would be a good one.
Yeah, it would be
somebody like that.
Jim Jordan. It would be somebody like Elise Stefanik.
Scalise said he wouldn't run.
They all say that. They all say that.
That promise is worth, is not worth it's printed on. Like, if I go over to the House and I'm like, yeah, we're not gonna do it. We're not going to do anything tonight. It's like, yeah, that promise is not worth the paper it's printed on. So I think that, if people come to him and say, you're the only one that can save the caucus, you're the only one that can unite us, and McCarthy, what it would take is McCarthy saying, I'm not running. And as soon as McCarthy says, I'm not running, then Scalise can step in. That's the play.
And he's probably not going to do that. McCarthy wants to be the speaker, doesn't he?
Right, but if he doesn't have the votes, then he'll step aside. If he
okay.
do a whip count, because it would be the degree of humiliating that would be involved if McCarthy tried to go for speaker, they took the vote, and he came up short. It'd be the first time in decades. I mean, you'd have to go back to probably the 20s before the last time that a speaker vote failed. Like, that's how uncommon it is. So I don't think, if he doesn't think he's got the votes, he doesn't take the risk. And I think that, that they pick somebody like Scalise or any of the other 6 or 7, high profile Republicans who are willing to make consent. Because this is the other thing. It doesn't have to be you don't want necessarily a rank and file member. You want somebody who is a leader kind of in your mold, who is willing to make concessions to you, who says, I'll do it, and I, in order to get your votes, I will put you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, as chair of the craziness committee, or foreign relations or something like that. Like, you don't care necessarily about having the perfect person. You care about having a person who's willing to make deals with you.
Gotcha. All right, Dylan, you're the last word, and then we got the second education, which cats is a topic, and remember, it's a point counterpoint, so we're not really arguing over it. We want everybody's opinion on cats topic. So go ahead, Dylan, and close us out on this. And I am just so thankful that you all are here. I always think, man, I can't believe I got all these friends here. We're all just having a good conversation. So I thought I had to throw that out there, but go ahead, Dylan.
Okay, well, thank you. Got plenty of speaking time today, making up for my absence. So to Nikki, so I do agree. Kevin McCarthy, even in the state of California, with other just Republican GOP that vote for him, he doesn't even do very well here. And I mean, even for running for his position, he has to be even a little more liberal than the median average for Republicans, and he's still not liked very much. Politically, he's a snake. He stabs anybody in the back, and he'll drag you down with him. He's
Can
also
I just
pushed.
say one thing, Colin, really quickly, and that is, there is one likable thing about him, and it's that he chooses his fundraisers well. So when
Did you just call me Colin?
Sorry,
Yeah, he called you Colin. I was gonna say, what was that?
What
I was like, I
are
heard
you
that too.
associating me to?
Dylan.
All twinks look the same.
Getting his twinks
Yeah, I heard
mixed
it
up.
too. I heard it
Yeah,
too, Dylan.
they're
Don't
all the
worry.
same. I just wanted to say that the one thing that I think Kevin McCarthy does get a lot of credit for, is that he's very good at like choosing his fundraisers well. He makes sure that the candidates he's working for hires good, ethical, decent homosexuals, and make sure.
Funny,
Oh,
funny,
Jesus.
funny. Okay, I know where this is going.
But his speech last night was embarrassing, you guys. Let's just say that. I mean,
It
come
was,
on.
and to
I didn't even listen to it. I didn't even listen to his speech.
Nikki taking swipes. Okay.
So, anyways,
Yeah.
thank you guys for telling me your feelings on this. We'll talk about this next couple weeks as things break out and go, and we'll go into it and stuff. I'm going to next week we are not talking about political stuff. Nikki and Katz are doing double education, and I want all of you guys here, even the listeners, to just listen, and we're gonna have a game show. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. That's what the forum's gonna just turn into a conservative political forum double header trivia next week. So I'm looking forward to all of you guys being here, and even the listeners just having fun listening to us, laughing and having fun. So that will be a blast. But real quick, I'm going to go over the guidelines again, and I'm going to hand it over to Katz, and we'll have fun with this conversation. So let me go to the guidelines here once again. As freedom thinkers here in the Conservative Political Forum, we believe and value our constitutional rights. We recognize that even amongst ourselves there are varied opinions. This forum is a safe place for all. We won't tolerate personal attacks or raise voices. We ask that you be considerate of all persons who do not want to hear profanity, and please be self-aware of your mic time. But Katz has her own rules with that, so just with Reducation, so she'll go over those as well. We just want to ensure that everybody can contribute to this Reducation topic coming up. So go ahead, Katz, take it away.
All right, thank you, Jason. So just well, darn it, hang on a sec. Just a brief on what Reducation is. It's a weekly segment designed to provide education via point counterpoint with each other on topics that are important to many Americans. And sometimes these topics can be emotionally charged. So all forum guidelines are in place for this segment. We expect speakers to remain civil. If you have a mic, you'll have a chance to respond. Raise your hand. I will call on you. Since this is a special segment for it, we don't have the 3-minute limit necessarily as we do in the 30-minute normal session, but You still should be aware of your mic time and based on hands that are up so that everyone does have the ability to contribute. So the topic for this special double reducation is, quote, gender affirming care, unquote. So is it care? And should minors be allowed to have any type of this supposed care? Should they be allowed to have it without parental permission? And why is there such I can't even think of what word to use. All of a sudden it's like seems like it's happening a lot more frequently, because before it seemed like the transgender persons only were, I believe, 2% of the population, maybe 2 to 5, but it's like more and more and more, and they've got clubs in schools, and there's peer pressure for people to come out as transgender. I mean, Gabs, who I'm sure many of you know, and she was in here, talked about how her daughter ran into that exact scenario and she rescued her from that. Why is it being pushed? That's another question too, because you just got to wonder, does it have to do with trying to get children away from their parents? Does it have to do with the desire of certain elites to have population control? Because, of course, if you surgically remove uh, reproductive organs, obviously you are not going to be able to reproduce and therefore not increase the population. So what's going on? What do you think? Nikki, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I think it's a good question, and I think there's a lot of pieces to it. Obviously, I'm not trans, but my experience of it has just been that there are these people out there, these teenagers out there who become young adults, who become adults, and they have, there's more acceptance now, and there's more willingness to um, there's more willingness to to let them be a full-fledged member of society. And as that happens, there's more you know there's more willingness to make it possible for them to have autonomy. But the thing is, I'm not an expert in this, and I think we should ask an
I'm
expert.
gonna kill you. I swear to God.
Dude, I totally called that joke. I called that.
Yeah,
I
Biddy
saw that
called
coming
it.
from a mile away.
I was gonna say, Dylan, what do you think?
Yeah.
You were struggling to get it out.
You were literally about to die laughing, Nikki.
I'll never be a stand-up comic.
You okay, Cats? You want your segment back?
Yeah, I mean, it is really a serious thing, and it's happening more and more and more. And actually, it's about money too. Isn't it always about money? Because
No, it's not. It really, like, be
already,
serious for a minute. I started the LGBT club at my high school back in 2001. Before some of these folks were born. Thank you very much, Dylan, Colin, Sean on a good day, depending upon how he looks in the mirror. And see, I can make jokes about other things. But no, seriously though, like, I've had friends who've dealt with this in the most painful ways a person can when it comes to their identity. And it is not fun. and it is not easy. And I would encourage anyone who thinks that this is just about the money to spend a couple months getting to know some trans people, and certainly, especially trans people who are in high school. Kids who are going through this, not kids, teenagers who are going through this, and learning about the struggles they're dealing with, and the challenges at school, and the challenges when it comes to playing sports, and the challenges when it comes to working, getting comfortable with their parents, and going on dates, and all of that. Um, there are a lot of things in life that are about money. This is the farthest thing from money. There is money involved in doing things like transitions and hormone replacements and all that kind of stuff, but that is the smallest part of what is a massive change in people's lives and a challenge that they're dealing with. It's like saying that, having heart surgery is about money. No, it's about having heart surgery. Money is involved in treating heart surgery, in treating diabetes, in treating any. This is a medical condition, and money is a part of treating a medical condition. It is not the most important part of treating a medical condition.
I'd like to comment on or add to what you just said. So I'm with Arizona Legal Watch. I'm an attorney, but I'm licensed in California. I'm transgender. I started my transition 10 years
Was
ago.
it silent for anyone else?
Oh, hello?
Yeah.
I can hear her. I don't know if.
Oh, okay.
I'll drop down.
Oh, sorry about that. And I think you raised good points. I think one thing that gets uh, there's a lot of noise around. A lot of medical issues get politicized and socialized, and in doing that we lose track of the real issue. So in this case, gender dysphoria is literally a mental health condition, right? And so as political individuals started to socialize it and then politicize it, then we lost track of the real dangers that transgender people face, both you know in schools and all aspects of their lives. And I think I started my transition when I was 20, and at that time they were giving out hormones like they were candy. Like, you just go to the therapist and like, oh, I'm a woman, and they're like, okay, let's start you on therapy. And there was not a lot of education around the consequences of transitioning. And so when I look back, I think I would have appreciated if a doctor would have given me more information, medical information, to decide whether I should make that decision. Because looking back, I wish now I cannot have kids. Before taking hormones, I could have taken precaution medical measures uh, to be able to still have my own children. But now I can't do that. And so I think if at 20, as an legal adult, I didn't have the mind, legally I had the, informed consent. I had the ability to legally consent, but truthfully, I didn't really have the tools to ask these questions. And it was more of a pressure that all my friends around me were sort of doing it. And I mean, there was the dysphoria, but the social context also, in schools, in my school, within my friends, it made it so much easy to just jump in and not ask those questions. So I think children shouldn't be allowed to make those decisions. If at 20, I think, most people are still growing, and maybe even later we're still growing. I think it's a big change that requires a lot of very specific attention, uh, meaning medical attention, because there's a lot of medical procedures. I mean, hormones they change your life. And I don't think a child should be able to override their parents' consent. It just doesn't make any sense. Um, so that's sort of my perspective. I'm conservative. I worked for the Trump campaign in 2020. I've worked in campaigns in Arizona. And so I think it's I think Democrats politicize the issue. They use it as a wedge issue. So then now Republicans have to attack it. But I think in this whole political back and forth, we literally lose track of the people we're supposed to be helping as a society, as a country, right? Because, and I'm not saying that I'm not disclaimer. I'm not saying that Gender dysphoria is the same thing as being bipolar, but they're mental health conditions that need to be treated and paid attention to. And I think Ben Shapiro does a great job at articulating a lot of, at least with me, like the way I understand, transgender. In my view, I think he nails it very well in that he still is able to communicate the idea objectively, in terms of objectively transgender women are still male, but in a social context, you can still refer to him as, or is, if whatever pronouns they prefer, right? But I think it's a fun, um it's an interesting topic to look at politically, uh because it's politicized. But I think we need to kind of step back and look at, okay, socially this is what it is, but objectively we have to look at it too, right? Like, I think somebody talked about the Olympics or like sports. I mean, that's a hot topic, and a lot of the times, like, I think, I mean, I don't really have a clear stand on that, because in one hand it is disadvantaging genetic females, in terms of their ability to go to college on scholarships. And then on the side of, if we put them with men or genetic males that are identified as males, then you know our bodies change with hormones. So that's, interesting. So there's creative solutions like creating divisions for transgender athletes, right, where they can compete among, transgender groups. But I think we get lost in the black and white or extremes, day and night sort of contrast. But I think the more we're able to talk, we can share ideas and create solutions, and not be afraid to make mistakes, in our discourse, and learning. I think we should be fine.
Arizona, thank you for your perspective, and I'm sure that it is not an easy thing. Primarily, the conversation is focused on minors, and it just seems like this is happening more and more often. And also, I believe there are some states that have even put into place laws that the minor child can, have surgery or take puberty blockers without parental consent, which I think is wrong.
Yeah.
Also, Arizona, just so that you know, in our forum, we do go by raised hands to call on folks to talk. So we are going to go ahead and move to a couple that have had their hands raised for quite some time. Be sure to mute your speaker when you're not talking, so we don't have interference. Dylan, go ahead, please, if you would.
Okay, so it's been a few years since I've been out of high school, but I did know a couple of people that were in that process during my time in high school. One of my best friends at the time in high school, her name was Marguerite Hennard, later Grayson Hennard, decided to begin that transformation process. And then later, another one of my friends, honestly, I can't. Oh, Jasmine. There we go. Jasmine. I don't know what his current name is, but I do know that there was a transition at some point. In high school, at least from my experience in California, it wasn't necessarily so difficult. Pretty much you just show up and, hey, this is what I wanted to be called. I'd appreciate it if you did it. If not, I understand, but this is what I've decided to do. And so it was definitely a very, I don't know, nonchalant process. I know a couple of people who kind of flip back and forth in high school about that. But for the most part, I would say it was majoritarily sincere. There were a few individuals that kind of did it as like a stunt for like a couple months, and then it was over. Actually, one of I guess he's my step cousin at this point, just recently got disowned over this very issue. His mother's a teacher, and she disowned him when she came back from, I believe it was a business trip or like a teacher's conference, and he was in a dress and like a skirt. She was not thrilled about that at all, asked him to leave, and then he was with his grandparents for a couple months. And I've still talked to him since. He's now back in college and moved in with his father, which he wasn't exactly psyched about, but he's currently the only person to take him in. His grandparents kind of got old of it real quick, but they were at least supportive. And for in high school specifically, and for minors, Jasmine, her parents were not psyched about that at all. So because me, Marguerite at the time, and Jasmine were very good friends, she bought a chest binder, which is kind of one of those new hot things about, ooh, what is that? Essentially, it's like a tube top bra of sorts, but it's meant to essentially crush the mammalian glands for breasts. Essentially, it just crushes it to make a flatter chest for the appearance of a male. And so for Marguerite, he at the time bought the chest binder for Jasmine, and because her parents wouldn't let her at the time bring it back home. And so that was a point of contention. I know the year after high school, he then moved out. Um, it's really complicated to go back and forth, he and she, but honestly, I'm going to stick with she for both of them. She in high school was actually dating one of my friends, Zane, and she broke up with him, and there was a major contentious part to the relationship of transitioning across to a male to female, or no, female to male, and how, you fell in love with one person and now they're just an entirely different identity, and how that suddenly is just such a shock, not only to their family, but, to any, romantic relationships they have. For teachers, for the most part, they were pretty supportive, almost too supportive to a point where it was almost creepy how much they wanted to be involved with it, but not my life. There were, a couple of issues in school with, people not necessarily wanting to say, pronoun this way or pronoun that way, which, I mean, they were pretty understanding and respectful of, but there was definitely a lot of issues of just finding themselves. And I mean, I had the same phase. I mean, Nikki probably won't believe this, but I had a liberal phase in high school, quite a large one, to the point of like listening to Troye Sivan, which ew. But there's definitely, I'd say, a lot of formative years that, I mean, shit, I'm 20 and I, apologies, haven't even figured everything out. So, and for my cousin who's currently 20 as well, she is schizophrenic as well, so it doesn't help the issue there. Having multiple identity crises, I don't know the proper multitude for that. And then to also deal with issues of not only which person you are, but then what gender you are. It does definitely come down to a mental health issue in some capacity. Now, as to the physical alterations that she now wants to make, I don't know. But I do know that it's not cheap, and money isn't everything specifically in this case. I think insurance actually covers it. But it's definitely difficult for young people to find that within themselves within these formative years. And to be able to express that and then not to be laughed at immediately or, because, oh, well, this has never happened before, therefore it's not real. Because, like, there are people who specifically that I've known that have legitimately felt those ways, and it's kind of heartbreaking because they're not faking it, they're not joking it, they're legitimately heart sold on it. So they're very much looking for support and looking for affirmation, but also the check of reality. Am I actually doing this for me? Is this something that I actually want? Are people around me being too supportive? Is this something that, I can live with? And I know in the case of Grace, she's back to a she. So that didn't last more than 2 years. And I know she's quite dismayed about that because now she doesn't have breasts. That quite tragically occurred. And it's just one of those things that it is irreversible. Like 95% of the time, it's irreversible, especially if you take hormone blockers for so long that, as Arizona was saying, you're never going to get your ability to reproduce again. So that is something that, I mean, do we just allow 18-year-olds to castrate themselves, essentially, is the question. And are you going to allow, a medical intervention on behalf of that, at that point, child, if they're below 18? And and to deny them the experience of humanity, which is life to reproduce. And that's a question that I don't think we fully understand, and there's been a mockery of recently. So I think there's many points of not only contention, but also moral complexity of the issue that I think people, A, fail to understand and realize, and then B, to comprehend and just like that is the terms of a person's life and what they're able to continue with it, whether they're going to have kids or not, which I mean, even for gay men alone, you know, it keeps me awake at night, you know, the thoughts of, you know, possibly never having children. So for people to contemplate giving up their ability to reproduce entirely, I mean, I could just like, you know, go have a one night stand with a woman and then boom, I have a kid. But I'm not, you know, physically altering myself to the point of never being able to have children. And so I think that is something that is going to have a lot of heartfelt consequences, especially if it's not taken care of with the utmost sincerity.
I have a question for you, Dylan. Do you
Go for
think
it.
a woman should be able to get her tubes tied at 18?
Not necessarily. I wouldn't. I like, and that's the thing for vasectomies for men too. I disagree with it before the age of like 21. I don't know how you're able to take, especially in the context of our society, how it's okay for you to be able to, you know, not smoke and not drink and do these things that are going to permanently hurt you in a capacity until 21. But you're able to like essentially mutilate yourself before that point, to take apart, you know, a working part of you. Now, I don't necessarily think you have the full soundness of mind at that point in your life to be able to decide that. I
So
mean,
let me ask you this then to add to that. Because Kat's subject is on kids getting surgery, should kids be able to have transgender surgeries, or shouldn't they be an adult before the decision happens in their life? Because that's, I think, the basic topic of this conversation. So what do you think, Dylan?
I honestly don't even think 21 is right. For such a monumental decision to essentially not only change who you are and how people perceive you, but to your own abilities to produce offspring as however many thousands of generations of human beings have come before you, you are ending a bloodline. You are ending your ability to procreate and to continue your family's existence on this earth, which I know is different for different people. Um, but for me, it's just something that's like placated my mind for years, being, you know,
So
the only male in my family.
thank you. And Katz, that should be your question probably, right? You want to know what people think about that too, right?
Well, yes, and I was just going to ask Dylan that very thing, which the question is, should minor children be allowed to get surgeries or take puberty blockers? Also, the secondary question is, should those minor children be allowed to keep this more or less a secret from their parents, as is allowed by certain state laws? So every person who um, decides to respond to this question, I would like them to answer that question. Yes. So it sounds like Dylan definitely does not agree with that, given that he mentioned the age of 21. And, I actually kind of like that because,
Well,
I
let me
mean,
let me
like,
answer your last part real quick, Katz, and then you can continue.
sure.
Um, on the part of keeping it from your parents, in some capacities, I do believe it a necessity, and I'll explain why in a moment. Like for example, with what does she go by now? We're just gonna go with Jamie because that's her mom's name. My I guess step cousin now. Um, he and then now she has legitimately faced I wouldn't say death threats from her family, but not only disownment, but also being removed from a will, being not allowed to come to Christmas family parties, to keep, I mean, like, I just think of this as a gay guy, to be able to hide my sexuality from my family for a while I'm figuring it out, I think is an absolute necessity. You need to be able to form your identity before you get disowned for it. While it would be nice if, you know, every single parent on earth was, you know, just oh so happy to see their child, you know, come into who they are, there are a lot of people who would probably take a cinder block to their child's head if they figured that out. And I don't think that is a safe environment for a child to be in, and I don't think that is a position for a adult in a position of trust with that child to be able to out them. Which is why I disagree with the ideas of teachers being able to out children no matter their sexuality in school, because that is a place for them to learn and to understand, and I think they should be able to ask questions without being forced into revealing their thoughts to a family member and then being sent to a Bible camp. I don't think that is a necessity. I don't think that that is something that is required. I mean, obviously the parent has a lot of choice in what's going on, but I don't think that they should be entirely so able to close the doors for that child.
All right, thank you, Dylan. I'm going to go a little out of order just simply because we haven't heard from her. But I would like to hear from Mitty.
So I was just gonna kind of reframe the question because I feel like this is similar to abortion in a way where it's we ask, should it be allowed instead of who should decide? Like, should it be the government who decides? Should it be the parents who decides? Or maybe kind of along what the lines of what Dylan was saying, should it be the person who decides? I don't know the answer. I don't know anything about transgenderism and all that stuff. So I definitely don't want to decide. I don't want it to be on a referendum or anything like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I just feel like that's kind of a more productive conversation.
So you don't have an opinion on whether or not a minor child should have such surgeries, like a mastectomy, for
I mean,
example?
it
You
feels
don't.
like it should. I feels like they shouldn't, but what do I know? And I don't really want to be the one that decides because I don't know anything about it, and so I kind of feel like that we should decide which level this kind of decision is made at, and is it the government? Is it me deciding as a voter? I feel like that's a little bit weird, but that's just my opinion. So.
All right, thank you. I wasn't sure if Nikki was first or Colin.
Senior,
Colin, go
so he's younger.
ahead.
I'm
Oh,
I'm taking privilege here.
You're old. You have no, my argument
I
doesn't
will
work. Never
step
mind.
He
aside
has
when
top privilege.
die, darn it. And before then, you
Shut
can
up, you
your
sub.
epic turn.
respect your elders. Respect
Yes,
your elders. Come on.
extra elders, especially the ones that buy you boba.
You're gonna be
But
buying me a lot of boba soon.
yeah, we'll see about that. We'll see how Matt Mahan does. Anyway, we're talking about trans. We're talking about the questions you
Oh,
had.
there's a lot of trans at my school. There's Nick Tran, Nathan Tran, Alex Tran, there's Iris Tran, there's
Okay.
Michaela
Oh,
Tran, there's
okay.
Alexa Tran, Kaylin.
You're not
All
allowed to
right,
make better jokes than
Colin.
okay.
I got
So,
you, Colin.
so on the surgery thing, not until you're 18. Period. Even with parental consent, not until you're 18. With the puberty blockers thing, there are plenty of very, very dangerous medications that we let parents prescribe their kids for a wide variety of reasons, some of which are great, some of which are not. You can get your kid growth hormones, you can get your kid amphetamines, you can get your kid all kinds of other things. Puberty blockers are not nearly at the level of like the most dangerous shit we let you get your kids for arguably like not cosmetic reasons, but like not like chemotherapy, this drug is necessary to save their life reasons. Like nobody needs Adderall. It's very helpful for certain things, but nobody's going to die without Adderall. I would argue that that is equally dangerous in some ways, to say nothing of opioids and any number of other things that you can get prescriptions for. So I think that if parents want to give their kids puberty blockers in consultation with a doctor, they should be able to do that. Kids be able to how much of this should kids be able to do behind their backs? The answer is that if they are exploring their sexuality or gender identity at school, and they're not breaking any laws, and they're not taking any medications, and they're not trying to do any black market surgery, and all they're doing is talking to their friends about it and telling their friends they might be trans and maybe wearing some clothes at school that they're not going to wear at home, then I don't think teachers should be required to tell parents if they discover that. If they want to tell them, if they feel like they have to because the kid is suicidal or something like that, fine. Teachers have always been able to do that. I don't think they should be forced to tell parents about that kind of thing, because it can be extraordinarily detrimental to the life of the student. And, for people who've had to go through that, it is an absolutely, miserable experience. And thankfully, not all trans people have, including some of the ones in this space. But
Seriously.
I'm not trans. Fuck off.
I am
Brandon,
co-host, so
please.
I'm gonna jump in right here. To Nikki's point, yes, actually, LGBTQ, because I'll throw that in there, homelessness rates are of the highest of any group, whether you go by race, ethnicity, age, well, I guess age you can't really, but for youth homelessness, those who identify within that group are disproportionately at a higher risk of being homeless. So yes, that is also a very big issue.
Thank you, Dylan. Let's see. Oh, Colin, your hand was up, but then it went down, and
Yeah, can
now
I
it's
go
back
now?
up
I had
again.
it down because I was talking to Nikki earlier. Can I go now?
Okay.
Yeah. So actually, me and my friend were actually talking about this today. The idea of transgenderism in specifically schools and youth. And one thing we were talking about is how actually the definition of transgenderism is technically different depending on the person's definition of sexual identity and all that type of stuff. Yes, you go do a more cis perspective, they're gonna have very much straightforward answer, but you go to a more modern homogeneous idea of genders and sexualities, you start to see, well, maybe transitioning isn't the best now, but I definitely want to do this in the future if I still know this about myself and stuff like that. And that seems to be something a lot more people my age are actually starting to think, because they're hearing these stories now about people transitioning then and not working out for them, and then them having transitioned back. So some people are starting to wait more due to this as well.
As they should. Arizona.
I just wanted to go a little deeper into the concept of the relationship between a child and their parents. And I think from a legal perspective, there's a fundamental principle of trust and sort of stewardship between a parent and a child, in that under the law, a child cannot create the mental, or doesn't have the mental capacity to create informed consent. And the idea is that the parent or the parents are able to make those decisions for the child, right? And so the idea that a child could go around that relationship is a betrayal of that relationship, for one, of that trust relationship, of stewardship. And what it creates then is that what we're saying is it's okay for the child to do that, do it behind their back, because now allegedly we have somehow shifted to this idea that a minor, a legal minor under the age of 18, is now able to create this independent capacity to then take those decisions. The danger of that is that if we're now saying that a child can make the decision to a life-changing decision, such as becoming sterile, where you can no longer have children at the age of 8 or 9, then what we're saying indirectly is that this same child is able to create the same informed consent to then have sex with an adult, right? So what we're saying is this 8-year-old can now have informed consent and consensual sex with a 20-year-old, with a 40-year-old, right? Because there's no longer that stewardship between this child and their parents. And so it's extremely scary to hear these ideas being tossed around in a sort of more larger political social narrative, where what we're saying is you're no longer a child, you're now an adult who can create informed consent, who can somehow now understand all the consequences, medical, social, and financial consequences of this decision that's going to change the rest of your life. And I think somebody earlier mentioned, or made a reference to like medication for like ADHD. And I agree that there are medications that can assist. And, and I mean, a lot of children take it. But I think the idea is that these decisions are being made between ideally two parents who are caring for a child. If then the child is able to just go and get the drugs on their own, then we're going to have a huge addiction problem, right? Because now you have children making adult decisions. And then next thing you know is teachers are having secret romantic relationship with children in schools because they want to explore their gender or sexuality. And I think that's the danger, huge danger of removing that parental oversight among these children. So the idea that we're going to remove the parents out of the picture, it's very scary and it should alarm people, because there are legal consequences. Because then the next step after that is, well, if this child can make informed consent to, um, change their body and go around their parents to do so, then this child then can uh, be in a relationship with a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old. And I think we should be, um, a lot of the concepts in the law, or the way we analyze this, we always err on the side of caution, because one decision can have huge impacts later. So I agree with you in terms of that children should not be making these decisions. It destroys the that relationship between a parent and a child.
Thank you, Arizona. Shiloh?
Hi, sorry, I keep getting kicked out of the space for some reason. Twitter hates me tonight. Um, on that note, I'm not sure how many people in here are postmenopausal women or have been through menopause and taken hormones, but I feel like there's this huge gap in education for not just the kids that are saying that they want this, but the parents as well. And if you've ever been on hormones, they mess you up. Um, and a lot of these kids are not finding out until they've been through several years of being transitioned. And then there's, I've seen a lot of them right now coming back and saying, I can't go back and I want to go back. It was a phase. And I think that they're moving so quickly to try to take over this culture war with the kids, that we're seeing a lot less, well, discipline in the home for one. There's a lot of kids out there just acting a fool. And then you've got the kids whose parents want to make sure that they get the helicopter parents that spoil their kids like crazy. And they use the suicide message. Your child is going to die unless you follow through with this. And it's scary. I've been in contact a little bit with, I don't know if anybody here knows who Blair White is. If so, if you can just throw up a thumbs up so I don't beat a dead horse. Okay, Blair White is a conservative transgender commentator. Blair transitioned just as she had become an adult. And I say she because she really presents as a woman. And she is very, very opposed to children being on puberty blockers and has talked about her struggle with them, even though she's happy where she is. There's also another activist named Buck Angel. And you can see both of their accounts on Twitter, where they have come out, a lot of the adults who have transitioned and saying, no, stop, don't. We can't do this because these kids are being irreparably harmed. It's been found that trans men, they get a little older, they need mastectomies just to prevent them from getting cancer from the puberty blockers. And your brain does so much development during that time that you're essentially, the second they start puberty blockers, their brain stops growing. So here you are, these kids come off of them, then they want to detransition, and their brain goes through this rapid development. And then all of a sudden it was, oh, I've made a mistake. And there are thousands upon thousands of videos and social media posts from Gen Z, in particular, that I've seen saying, I wish this never happened. And now they don't have legal recourse. They're stuck in a place that they don't want to be. And now they're being ostracized from the very community that they were in, because detransitioning is, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're homophobic. Once you transition, you step away from that, and that the LGBTQ community does not, a lot of them do not look kindly upon it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've read and listened to quite a few detransitioner stories, and they're really sad. And there's kind of a common thread with many of them saying that once when they were younger, that they felt like they were the opposite sex and revealed this to counselors, parents, whoever, and, got connected with a psychiatrist type of person, that they felt like they were rushed into everything, like, here, take these puberty blockers and let's get you scheduled for top surgery, and so on and so forth. And mainstream medical sites will say that puberty blockers are reversible, and make it sound like, taking these is no big deal. But they're not reversible. And listening to the stories of these detransitioners will give you many examples of why that is not true. That's a fallacy. And there was a good example I read about that said that, for example, a young girl, as she is, getting toward puberty, if this girl was given a puberty blocker, her hips may not develop in such a way to allow childbirth, because the pelvis is shaped in such a way, and the size to allow a child to pass through and be born. But these young girls who went on puberty blockers, that kept their pelvis from developing as it normally would have. And so therefore, it is possible that by the time they maybe stop taking the puberty blockers, they've messed that up, and now it may be too late. And, not even not having a hysterectomy, they still have that problem of potentially not being able to give proper birth, because they've messed up their development with their pelvis. So, don't kid yourself when you hear this nonsense that puberty blockers are reversible and they're no big deal, because that's not true. But also, in reading the stories of the detransitioners, yeah, Shiloh, you're absolutely right. They do get ostracized by the LGBTQ community, which is really sad. I find that to be really sad. But in hearing them and hearing how they were rushed through getting surgeries and all that, again, I'm going to go back to money, because it's a $2 billion industry we're seeing more and more, teenagers or young people claiming that they're transgender when a lot of it's peer pressure or pressure from other people at the schools, or things that they're getting off social media, for example. So we're seeing a lot more of these instances where it's really just a child being confused or being misled, but they're estimating that what's a $2 billion industry now, within, I think it was 5 years, is going to be a $10 billion industry. So why is it being rushed through? It's because money can be made off these confused children. And that is really sad. Shiloh, I think that you did have your hand up next, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that just kind of it makes me a little crazy. They're giving these kids consent to sterilize themselves at a point in their lives when they don't know if they want children, and they end up with osteoporosis. The incidence of cancer is higher,
Yeah.
and the suicide rate actually increases once somebody has transitioned. After 5 years, the suicide rate that has been shown to increase.
Yeah, it's just really sad. Dylan?
Colin
Yes.
had his hand
So,
up first, Cats.
oh, okay, yeah,
Oh, okay,
Colin
I'm
can go.
sorry.
Yeah, Colin
Colin.
first.
As someone that is part of the young LGBTQ community and knows someone who has detransitioned, the idea that bullying and bad behavior is done is absolutely bullshit. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I'm saying happening at a large scale is hugely misrepresentative of the community and why many people in my community distance themselves from conservative conversation. This is a misclassification. Yes, I would be able to hear it if people were saying, oh, sometimes blank. But no, you guys are making a mass classification. We had somebody at my school who was a senior when I was a freshman, who sophomore year transitioned. Around, I believe it was around June last year, they detransitioned. Everyone helped them out. Everybody made sure that they felt safe. People were texting them, making sure they were good. There was no hate. Everybody just wanted to make sure that they felt okay. An idea, yes, there may be some situations, but people have a sense of community, especially if they're around people that they know appreciated them and confided in them. And having these ideas and having these false notions really puts a harm on these people, and it really makes sense to why some of my friends won't even interact with conservatives anymore.
Well, that's understandable, Colin. I don't think that anyone has any statistics to say that, in 50% of the cases, um, other people are not nice to the detransitioner. Nobody has a statistic like that, but I've read quite a few of these stories, and it did seem to be a trend. But again, I don't know a percentage. Dylan?
So I will both agree and disagree with Colin. So one of my mutuals on here, Daniel Delafay, he does a podcast called Dangerous Rhetoric, and they had on the guy who recently detransitioned from being a female. If you don't remember his name, and I'll throw his out here in the Jumbotron when I grab it, but J.K. Rowling had retweeted his thread about detransitioning. Um, I mean, God, the conservative boomer talking points about like it's just peer pressure. Like this sounds like video game violence and weed all over again from my perspective. It does get incredibly tiresome. I don't think it's entirely peer pressure. Sure, there's a component to it, but it's not entirely there. A lot of the hate that I think you were trying to describe, Katz, comes from the trans community itself with detransition. And he gives an hour and a half long interview about exactly what he felt, the issues with it, and how during specifically his time period, not so much relatable to Colin and my age group, but specifically with millennials, having to not only come out as not straight, but then also having to go through with an entire persona change, the way you dress, the way you talk, the way of who you are, and then to say, oops, never mind, I made a mistake and walk that back is incredibly difficult. And there are a lot of people who see it, oh, you didn't complete it, you didn't give it enough of a shot. I think those were his main points. And how, he wakes up with a boner for a penis that he no longer has, and how detrimental that is to him every single day that he can't even take it down because there is parts of the tissue that they missed removing, and he can't have that removed. Essentially, he chose that path and he's stuck with it. And it's very emotionally difficult to live with yourself with essentially a self-inflicted wound when you weren't entirely ready to make that decision. So I think there is a legitimate argument to that. But I also agree with Colin that there is a point of misunderstanding and almost a know-it-allism with specifically older conservatives that I've noticed, where it's, oh, it must be this, oh, it must be that. Oh, they're just confused. Oh, they're just under peer pressure. It's the damn social media. It's the ticker talkers that are telling them to do this and that. When in reality, I don't think it is. I think it's possibly a fad. I mean, exponential rates of transgenderism do make sense, but you also have to look at the from the perspective that this may be a population that has been repressed and they are now showing themselves. Now, maybe it is what is it, birth? No, not birth control. Yeah, no, it's birth control in the water that's turning the frickin' frogs transgender. Maybe it's a chemical imbalance. Who knows? But there are definitely points to go to, I would say, accidents before malice, specifically when it comes to people. I think that these are just children exploring things. I don't see how it's necessarily any different from, your daughter picking up a G.I. Joe or your son a Barbie. It's just something that they're going to do. And, you can call out the people who are legitimately pushing it too far and taking it a step too far. But to then claim that the children are just being influenced and that you need to pull it away from them immediately before they hurt themselves, I mean, it's a little ridiculous because you can't put bubble wrap around your child its entire life and then expect it to be happy with you. There's going to be resentment. And I think we've seen a lot from not only the gay and the lesbian community, but bisexuals as well. And specifically now with the number of trans that have come out, you're going to overprotect your child to the point of a resentment. And I think that's something that's going to really last. And not even trying to understand the position, but rationalize it from your perspective without being able to assimilate another. So not being able to understand that, that child is confused. They've only been in the world, maybe 15, 16 years, but they have thoughts and they have ideas that differ from your own from, before the dinosaurs roamed the earth. And so it might be difficult for, some individuals to understand the nowadays challenges from these individuals and how they feel and how, they didn't grow up, with a tube TV. They have the internet, they have YouTube, they don't talk to their friends, they don't hang out at the park after school, they have got Discord and they video game and they do the ticker talkers, as how my grandmother says it. And so I think there's definitely a position for compassion and understanding, not full on support, but at least making the effort to know what they're going through and to make that little extra effort to not just write them off as clinically insane.
So let me throw something in there as we're wrapping up. And Katz has done a good job with this, but let me say this, Dylan. It is not just older conservatives that are doing that. It's concerned parents and people that are from all walks of life that maybe are jumping in and not having an understanding. And I don't think that we should be careful that we're just throwing that out there and saying, "Oh yeah, conservatives are the ones doing." No, 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 no. I have friends from all walks of life who love their kids and everything, and several of my friends would not allow their kids to go through to make a decision like that until they're an adult. And once they're an adult, they would let them do it. So I had to throw that out there, Dylan, because that's kind of not that it was. I just felt like it was a comment that could have gone the route
Didn't you
of
guys
it's.
just paint the brush of all transgender and gay individuals the same way not 15, 20 minutes ago? Like, as Colin pointed out.
I
No.
have been sitting here. I have been sitting here, listening. I haven't said anything, and I just jumped in. So I'm painting the brush as the host of the show, saying that I believe it's not all conservatives. I know friends that are not. This is my first time really jumping into this because, and so, but yes, there are conservatives that are like that. There are religious people that would do that. But the bottom line is I know a lot of concerned parents who like if I have a kid, if I had a kid and he was 14, I wouldn't let him even consider that stuff. You'd have to be 18 to 21, and then I'm not going to tell my kid what to do at that point. But as an underage kid, I'm not going to let my kid just make a stupid decision to when he's not an adult. Be an adult and then do adult things. That's how it is in my opinion. But it comes from all walks of life, Dylan. That's what I'm trying to say. I do believe that there are the leaning is from the conservative side, like you're talking about, but not all conservatives, not just conservatives. There are many concerned parents. There are many parents that care for their kids. From liberals to independents to Democrats. So I just wanted to bring that up in going in that route. But I know earlier you were talking about it, uh, Dylan, talking about how you agree that kids should not be able to make this decision until you said 20, right?
I would say even after 21, but yes,
Okay.
I believe Nikki agreed to 18.
Yeah. And so at that point, I mean, they're an adult, right? And then they can make that decision, right? And I think that's fair, just like if I had a kid and I don't want him drinking at 14 years old, alcohol, I would want him to be 21 and then you'd be like, at that point, that's up to you, like you make that decision, So,
Or
um,
a tattoo. Tattoo might be a better comparison.
what'd you say, Mitty?
Just that tattoo might be a better comparison than drinking because it's kind of a similar
Yeah.
change to your body.
Yeah, no,
Like
that no,
Buchanan's
that's a
tattoo.
good
I don't know
point.
how many
Yeah.
they do, but yeah.
Tattoo is a change to your body, yeah. So Dylan, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, bro. I appreciate all you have to say. So, and you're a conservative too. So I just wanted to bring that up too. Shiloh, go ahead, and then Katz, you can point out a few more things because it's your segment. I just kind of jumped in on.
No problem.
I just wanted to point out that I've also seen, and I don't know if anybody else has seen, a rising number in the small kids. Like we're talking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 single digit children that are who I've seen them on social media. Parents post the videos of them having their children start to detransition that young. So I think that there kind of needs to be made a distinction between children in the single digits versus the tweens versus the teens versus the elder teens, just simply because we're looking at brain development and influence of the people around them.
That kind of gets to my point about like who decides. Like if they're, I mean, I don't know if that's happening. That sounds disturbing to me as personally, but I don't have kids in that age group. But if a parent of say a 13-year-old wants to take them to therapy with the reversible hormones or whatever, um, do we need laws that outlaw that so we're taking it away from the parents, or is it the parents' decision? As long as the parents deciding, then we don't need a law against it. That's kind of gets at what my question was about. But
I think it's kind of just a difficult situation all the way around because as parents, we want what's best for our kids, but yet we don't want to see them make mistakes that are going to impact their lives in a negative fashion once they get out into the real world. Because as we all know, what they're seeing online versus what the real world is as even an adult are dramatically different.
But isn't that about? But then they would feel that way about their kids. And I agree. But shouldn't it be the parent's decision then, and not, you know, something the government or some other regulating power above them? Or like,
Oh,
I mean, I know you
absolutely.
care about the community's kids generally. We all do. But like, is it fair to give us a vote in someone else's kid? I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's a hard one, but
There definitely needs to be, I think, some deeper dive into it because no two situations are even the same.
yeah, which is
And
why the
so you,
decision, who makes a decision, is
it
more
who
important than
makes
what it is.
it
Yeah.
I feel like it needs to be a village decision, but also at what point does the government step in to say, hey, you know, this you can't do this to someone who can't make that decision or have adequate input on it. Kind of like if you're participating in your own defense in court, you know,
Yeah.
these kids can't participate in that way because they don't understand the consequences of their actions. But it's a fine line, and it's really just kind of a no-win situation.
Yeah, it's not easy, but yeah, it just it feels like it's not the question that we like that really is being asked is who decides, not if it's okay, because if it's okay is comes second. Who decides is the first important part that I feel like we always skip over. But that's just my way of looking at it.
Well, yeah. So with that MIDI and everything, Dylan was bringing that up. Dylan, who who decides? That's a good question. Give me your
I
opinion.
think I think like with abortion, the genie's out of the bottle, you're not putting it back into it. It's an issue that you're going to have to face, and it's not a question of whether they're going to do it or not. The question is whether you're going to make them legally be able to seek it or not. Because as we have found with trying to ban drugs, guns, and anything else underneath the sun, if there's a will, there's a way, and if there's a market to do so, I mean, back to Katz's point about money, there's a way that it will be done. And specifically just going to Mexico for that exact reason, you can definitely get medical procedures across the border for an eighth of the price in the United States. So it's not exactly something that I think banning in the United States will solve. It's going to be an issue that it's not a is it going to happen? Are you going to fully ban it? Are you going to fully allow it? There is going to be a gray period, and I think that's the area where most people are most uncomfortable, specifically with abortion, with taxation, with war, with now transgenderism. It's you're not going to have a answer that everyone is going to like, but you're eventually going to have to settle on one that pisses off everyone just so slightly, but that they can peaceably agree to it. And so I think that it's probably going to follow the same legal arguments as alcohol, tobacco, and in some cases firearms with the age of 21. Probably. If you're going to tell me that I can't have a chemical substance like tobacco or alcohol in my body until that age because I'm not developed enough for it, well, I could see you very easily winning a court case saying that, that same extrapolation shouldn't be able to be made to a person's identity. However, I could see somewhere between 18 and 21. You'll probably have some neurologists chiming in there saying, your brain isn't fully developed till about 25, and that's why you shouldn't take any psychiatric medications until then, and specifically why you shouldn't drink until 25 if you have a history of alcoholism in your family. So there might be specific points about that, and I'm sure if it were ever brought to, a state referendum and then voted on and then struck down in the courts for being unconstitutional, it'd probably end up like an Oberfeld case where you'd have a Supreme Court decision that would set precedent for it, and then at some point you might have a codification into law. But at that point, I think the issue would be so far drawn out and strawmanned that you'd really be at a disservice of the people that would actually be affecting. And at that point, they would become a politicized table issue that people would be talking about haphazardly without fully understanding the implications of what their vote would mean to another person. And I think that's where it really comes down to the point of you have this idealized version of a society that you're voting for, but then you have to realize you're living in one with 360 million other people in 50 different states, including Guam and Puerto Rico. There we go. And you're just going to have to realize that your solution is not going to fit everyone else's, and theirs might not fit yours. And I really could see it coming down to a state issue, like with abortion, with a possibility of a federal prohibition to a certain age, specifically at certain kinds of treatments. So I don't think it's going to be an easy challenge, specifically if this isn't just a political ploy that's picked up for a few years and then dropped. But I wouldn't be surprised if there is a minor amount of federal legislation and then a big shit at the state level. So,
And thank you,
He
Dylan.
speaks well, doesn't he, Katz? He
So,
speaks well, Katz.
Oh yeah, he's super smart. Super smart.
If we had a written chat, I
So,
would be saying facts.
so,
all right, Katz, go ahead.
all right, thanks. So down in the chat thing down in the lower right, I did post a link to a site with transition, or excuse me, detransition stories. I also posted quite a few articles in respect to the CRT that we were talking about earlier. So check those out. But in the meantime, I found something of interest here. Let me get to that page and read a part of it. It says numerous states have implemented or considered actions aimed at limiting youth access to gender affirming care. 4 states, Alabama, Arkansas, Texas, and Arizona, have recently enacted such restrictions. But the Alabama, Arkansas, and Texas laws at this time have been temporarily blocked by court rulings. 15 states are considering 25 similar pieces of legislation. And then it says at the same time, other states have adopted broad non discrimination health protections based on gender identity and sexual orientation. And as we know, the Biden administration uh, seems to feel like anybody of any age should be able to get anything done, no matter what the situation is. So there are state laws, and there are more state laws coming. If that is of interest to anyone. Are we closing down, Jason? What's the scoop?
Oh yeah, it's getting late. I think I just wanted you to be able to get your closing arguments of Reducation, and then we'll go from here to prayer, and then next week we got doubleheader trivia. Let me first of all, Katz, go ahead and do your closing arguments, and then come back to me, and then I got a question for you and Nikki.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thank you. So I appreciate everyone, your contributions to the topic. It was very interesting. I definitely feel that um, minor children should not be allowed to take puberty blockers or alter their bodies in any way, shape, or form. They're just simply too young to really know what's going on. And, after reading a lot of those stories, and I definitely invite you to read some of those stories, they're really, really heartbreaking. And, the fact that these these young people, I think in many of the stories, felt kind of almost pressured into taking action, or just kind of corralled into it. And the regret, the total regret that they can't have it back. They can't have their reproductive systems back, or their breasts back. And a lot of times, from taking puberty blockers, their voices have been altered, and they don't sound, like they should per their sex. And it's just really sad. So check out that link in the little chat box. And again, thanks everyone for your contributions to this topic.
Thank you, Cats. Nikki and Cats, I'll talk to you, but we're gonna pray real quick, and then I have a question. Next week, guys, we have with the elections pretty much over, that part of it, other than what's going on, we're just gonna have some fun next week, and then on Thanksgiving week, I'm not doing a forum. I'm dedicating a break to relaxing on the night before Thanksgiving, and so I can, maybe game online with my wife or go out or do something. But I need to take a break too. And then on November 30th, Sean is gonna co-host. He's our special guest co-host, Sean Darlin. So we're just gonna get back into it and have fun. But let me
Wait, when is
close
it? Is
in
there
prayer,
trivia?
and then
Sorry, is there trivia night? Is that what you said?
yeah,
Next week?
that's what I'm going to bring that up, but let me close
Oh,
us in
sorry. Okay.
prayer, and then we'll talk about that real quick. Father, I thank you for the conversations tonight that we had. I thank you that we get to work together with people from the Democrat, Republican, and Independent side of things, the conservative side of things, the liberal side of things. I thank you that we can come to find common ground continually, and we will continue to do this. I thank you. You help everyone to have peace over this midterm elections, and remember that there is hope, and there's always hope because we have hope in you. And I just thank you that you're protecting everyone in this room after the space closes, and watching over them and their health in the mighty name of Jesus. Oh, I thank you. You heal Shiloh, heal her body. I thank you, Lord. I know she's been going through a lot, and you just help heal her body, and that she can recover and become stronger than she was before. In the mighty name of Jesus. Amen. All right.
And the judge.
Yes, and the judge, heal him too. We really
What
want him to
happened?
be healthy again.
Is he okay?
What?
What
I
happened to
didn't
the
know.
judge?
Yeah, the judge has been he still has that vaccine injury that he's
Oh.
losing weight and stuff, and he's got diabetes from it and stuff. So,
Aw.
I mean, I hope he gets better. It's been a ongoing health issue for him for 2 years. So we just hope that
I
he
need
gets
to
better.
connect with him. Sounds like him and I are having a lot of the same issues.
Yeah, he's been going through it. Next time he's here, I'll let you know. So, and I mean, you'll be co-hosting again sometime. So, you'll be able to talk to him because he should be coming back. He won his election, guys. That's awesome. I'm really glad of that. So,
Yay!
Yeah, that's super exciting.
yeah. All right, so Nikki, this is serious stuff here because Colin's competitive and stuff. So it's serious, so we got to get ready because competitive Colin. I'm blaming Colin and Dylan. Yeah. Katz and Nikki, are you guys going to have plenty of questions to go an hour for your rounds?
Oh,
Remind
heck
me what the
yeah.
date.
Because remember, Nikki, you didn't have enough. Will you have enough
Remind me what the date is that I need to have it ready by.
next Wednesday?
So a week from today.
Yes.
Yeah, I can do that.
So
Yeah, I
Okay.
think he's used to going for an hour.
normally,
Oh, I heard he
You
only
guys are
lasted 30
too
seconds.
quick.
Okay,
Shots
okay, okay.
fired!
I mean, he'd know. What?
Oh my God! Stop it now! Stop it!
Nikki's getting older. It's cool. It won't be that way when he's older. So, anyways,
Hey,
let's
I'm
go on
ask
to
me a
dying. You guys are
question. Don't
killing
go
me tonight.
insulting.
Right?
Cats.
I'm just like.
Cats, you got your questions?
no, yeah, but I wanted to verify because normally we do this on a weekend, so it's definitely next Wednesday. Is
It's
that
the
right?
forum. We're doing, yes, we're for the conservative political forum rather than doing political talk next week because the midterm elections are over and we're going to step away from uh, political stuff. We're going to have fun doing double header trivia. Round one with you, round two with Nikki, and the winner of round one and the winner of round two will go head on in an overtime round. 9 questions.
Can
All right.
I ask a question or make a suggestion maybe?
Go ahead, Mitty.
It might be easier in Discord. I know that we'd have to like spend some time getting people hooked up,
No,
but
I'm gonna.
okay.
No. We're
Just
gonna
an
keep
idea.
it in the
Yeah,
Twitter space.
totally gotcha.
It's good. It's a good thing, but I want to keep it. You know, keep it here. It's a good suggestion, but not everybody here.
Yeah,
They
totally
use
understand.
Twitter only. So I'm just trying to make sure I accommodate them.
I've been like kind of excited about the trivia because I was listening last time and I super want to play. So like,
Are you gonna play? Are you gonna try to
yeah, I
play?
think
Get
so.
here and get a mic.
It was super. It sounded super fun. So.
It's you're gonna like it. It'll be fun. So the first come first serve with the microphones. Then the listeners get to make comments in the bottom and have fun too. Um, so Cats and Nikki will have questions. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Nikki?
Nope. That makes sense to me.
I
Okay.
did mine a little bit different in that I have more categories, but fewer questions per category, almost kind of like Jeopardy, the way that, what is it, like 5 to 7 maybe questions per category, kind of like that.
But are you gonna do the same thing I do with Nikki where I'd say stop when he's in the middle of the question, or do you want to still just do it your way?
No, I didn't have any problem with the stop part of it.
I think that so people raise their hands. That makes it so people can just raise their hand and try to answer. Whoever gets their hand up, we just call stop if the question's not done.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Perfect. All right. Well, I hope to see you all there next week for doubleheader trivia, and I'll probably obviously I'll see you guys, Mitty and Nikki, and all in Discord and stuff. I'm enjoying that long conversation with all you guys and Dylan. So it's a lot of fun to have.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. Thanks,
So
Katz. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks,
You're
Paul.
you're welcome. Hey, see you guys.
Oh,
Y'all take care.
you too.
Bye.
Adios.
Good night.
Night night.